Okay, so I will now bring the regular meeting of Township of Langley Council to order. And the first item is the adoption and receipt of the agenda items. Could I have a motion, please?
So move.
Moved by Councilor Davis and second by Councilor Whitmarsh. Councilor Ferguson, so your hand is up. Councilor Ferguson? You're muted, Councilor Ferguson.
Mine wasn't regarding the minutes. I just wanted to ask you procedurally, we go into special close at the end of this meeting rather than the beginning, right?
Yes.
Because I have an item I just want to make sure I get to on the table so we don't miss it, because we're in a Zoom right now. I just want to make sure that you're aware of that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Here, with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? None opposed. Carries. And move on to the adoption of the minutes of regular council meeting June 29th and this public hearing of June 29th.
So moved, Ferguson.
Moved by Councilor Ferguson. Seconder. Could I have a seconder, please? Councilor Davis and Councilor Richter. Councilor Ferguson, your hand is still up if you want to take it down. Let's see something to add. But Councilor Richter.
I'll put it down.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The first item is with regards to H2 on page 27 of the June 15th 20 minutes. We discussed that at the last meeting, and I had made a note in my on my agenda that staff would be circulating to us an updated version of the wording on that motion, and we did not get it. So I'm wondering if it could be recorded in the minutes, please. Not that we didn't get it, but what the updated version is.
Yes, Ms. Bauer. Yes.
Okay. The second item that I would like to add to the minutes pertains to page 2 and the delegation summary. It says here, the last sentence in the delegation summary, awarding this grant will ensure compliance with the federal and Heritage Canada funding to be received in a total amount of $233,250. I think that total should be included in the minutes.
Where was that again?
Page 2, under C1, the last sentence.
Okay.
The funding to be received in the amount of $233,250. That's the federal and provincial grant monies.
Okay, thank you.
On page 4.
Your worship, can we go slower here? Which one are we amending right now, please?
C1.
C1, and part of the delegation was the amount, and so Councilor Richter's asked that amount be added to the summary. Okay.
Yeah, and it's just to the end of that last sentence should do it. Okay. Page 4, the oh no, I'm sorry, that's not correct. Oh yes, it is. Page 4, item number E2. Which is about the committees restarting in September. And we did discuss the intent to accommodate those with age or health concerns. And is that still the intent in the wording presented here? So that if someone can't come to a meeting, they can still tune into the meeting and participate?
Yes, it is. And that's why, yeah, it says a hybrid approach. So, or hybrid approach. So yeah, and we're accommodating those who
okay. Yeah. And then on page 19 of the minutes, H8 under Q, H8 under Q8, it should read personnel, not personnel. So N-N-E-L, not N-A-L.
Oh, okay.
And I just had a question with regards to other business. There was a list of items distributed that I did go through at the end of the last meeting, but there's no record of that. And my query is, should there be a record of the items distributed matters that council addresses during a meeting? Because it would seem to me if we don't have a list in the minutes, they're going to get lost.
Okay, so our staff make notes of it while that list is going on, and then the minutes reflect the motions that the council makes. Maybe Mr. Backen or Ms. Bauer, you want to elaborate on that process because it predates me.
Our process up till
to date is that we take notes on those. They are discussed and they are forwarded to staff, so they are definitely addressed. But as the minutes are action minutes and there's no motion taken on them, we don't actually note them.
Okay, well, I guess I'm looking at the minutes from the point of view of they're really a written record of council's discussions or deliberations. And I note that we've had some things come through from people saying, I sent a letter, but I never got a response to it. That if we did have a list of the items distributed that were discussed in the meeting, that might help. But I will presume, and maybe you can correct me on this, Ms. Bauer, that this is something that we could take to the procedure bylaw discussions that aren't finished yet.
That's right. That could be something that is discussed during the discussion on the procedure bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so the hands, some call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries unanimously. Thank you. And we move on to delegations. There are no presentations. There's one delegation. Richard and Stephanie Hathard.
Just a question, Mr. Mayor, point of order, if I may.
Yes.
B2, did we do the motion on B2 or were we adopting B1 and B2 at the same time?
We had both of them. Did you have a question regarding the minutes?
No, I did not have a question.
Yeah, it was both. They were both moved.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I see the delegations here. So welcome here, and just provide your name and neighborhood that you live in, and you'll have 5 minutes to present to council. Thank you. Welcome here.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Froes and councillors. We'd like to start by thanking you for taking the time to meet with us and hear our concerns. We would also like to thank the councillors who have already responded to our emails and taken steps to address the issue at hand. My name is Stephanie Hather. I'm 34 years old and a special education teacher for the Surrey School District. My husband, Richard, is 36 years old and is the general manager of a graphics company in Delta. Together, we have 2 young daughters, ages 2 and 4. We live at 4775 216th Street, Langley, at the historic Murrayville Five Corners. The purpose of our delegation today is to request the removal of a large and dangerous willow tree from our property line immediately and without delay, pursuant to the Township's nuisance tree policy 06-304. Furthermore, we wish to discuss how the Township can help remedy the destruction of our sanitary and drainage systems. We have provided supporting documents for the removal of this tree to the mayor and councillors via email, which includes evidence of the destruction done to our property, our communication with the township, and letters of support from neighbors, including businesses, for the removal of this tree. The tree is located on township property and is wreaking havoc on our home and property. We have had 3 previous incidents as a result of pipes being clogged with masses of tree roots, and this, combined with the maintenance costs of the tree, have resulted in ourselves incurring costs of approximately $17,000 to date. Regardless of this prior financial burden on our family, what we are concerned with today is the current crisis and the very clear and present threat this tree poses to our property and home going forward. On July 1st of this year, a major flood occurred in our basement suite as a result of blockages in our drainage pipes due to masses of tree roots. We have moved out of our home to enable our tenants to move upstairs and avoid incurring additional costs to them after they have suffered months of COVID-19 related hardships. We ourselves are undergoing an immense amount of stress and turmoil as our repeated attempts to work with the township go nowhere, and we are shouldering the burden of working with insurance companies, various trades, the township, and preparing this case to present before the council, all while continuing to work, complete postgraduate studies, and care for our 2 young children. The emotional toll this has taken on our family is hard to put into words due to the level of fear and anxiety we are living with as we consider the implications this situation has for our future. As it stands, our pipes remain clogged with tree roots as the masses are so substantial that specialized strategies are being discussed by 2 drainage companies to formulate a plan to clear the roots. It is worth noting that this tree also caused blockages in the township sewer line well over a year ago, indicating that this pipe is compromised and seeping sewage into the aquifer and groundwater that feeds into the public well at the Five Corners. It seems the township has not seen fit to repair or replace this pipe. We are asking the township to remove this tree immediately and without delay and replace it with a more appropriate species for urban neighborhoods. The documentation we have provided will show our repeated attempts to work with the township to have this tree properly maintained and now removed in order to prevent future damage to our property. Please consider the following points to support our request to move the tree. The unreasonable and untenable financial burden being placed on our family, along with extreme stress and emotional distress. The threat of losing our commercial and residential tenants over these recurring issues, placing an even greater financial burden on us. Our cries for help being ignored by the township as recently as May 2020, who did not return calls, answer emails, or attend in person to assess the situation and have been completely unsympathetic. The township's refusal to do any sort of maintenance to this tree that could have prevented the prior and current disasters on our property. A cost-benefit analysis. What will it cost the township to maintain this enormous and aggressive tree properly to prevent damage to infrastructure going forward, if they can be trusted to do so, for the duration of its existence versus the one-time cost of removing and replacing it with something more suitable for the neighborhood? Our trust in the township has been completely eroded, and we cannot ensure they will properly maintain the tree to prevent future damage to our property if it is not removed. Finally, the impact on local businesses, including Tracy Cakes and Heritage Chiropractic, due to the frenzy of trucks in and around the property as they are struggling to reopen after the COVID-19 shutdown. And that's all we can fit into 5 minutes. Further to removing the tree, our family will be left with the financial cost of repairing and or replacing the damage to infrastructure caused by the tree roots, which include the sanitary and drainage pipes to our house, including the sump. Based on what we have already spent since July 1st and quotes for repairs going forward, this will cost us at least $20,000. Are we really expected to bear the financial burden of this as well? Where does it end for us? And when is enough enough? If the township is unable to work with us to come to a reasonable solution, we will have no choice but to escalate the matter to the office of the BC Ombudsperson. However, we hope and trust that by bringing our plight to the attention of the mayor and councillors, you will intervene to ensure a sensible and fair outcome for everyone involved. We would like to extend an invitation to you to meet with us at our property to discuss this further. Thank you.
Thank you. I have members of council with some questions. Councillor Richter.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for your delegation. I drove by the property this weekend following receipt of your information that you sent, and I noticed that there were 2 willow trees of the same size, one located directly in the backyard of your property and the other one located on the right-of-way. The one that is located in the backyard looks like it's got some little stairs that people could climb up into the tree on. And I'm wondering, do we know exactly which tree is causing the problem if there are 2 willow trees there? That's my first question.
Yeah, I mean, there are 2 trees. So the one in the backyard is on our property, and we have been undertaking getting different quotes to get that tree removed. And then the tree in the front property is the one that is actually larger and more aggressive, and the canopy takes up far more space. And the way the roots are coming indicate that it is primarily that tree causing the problem, but we recognize that both trees may be causing a problem, and we are going to be taking steps to remove the rear tree. However, we've been trying to work with the township to talk about the other tree because it's clear that they both need to be removed, and we're within our rights to remove the rear tree, but we're trying to kind of do it together, and we didn't want to go ahead and remove that rear tree and give, since the township has been so hesitant to work with us on removing the tree on their property, we didn't want to start removing trees and give them an even greater reason to not deal with that tree. So we were hoping to work together to get both trees done at once, to also eliminate the need for, excessive amounts of work trucks and vehicles and trades coming into the property at different times, since we do have 2 businesses operating on the property. And we were undertaking getting quotes to have that rear tree removed when the COVID-19 pandemic sort of hit, and we had to place a pause on it. In addition, the quotes we are receiving to remove that rear tree are in and around the area of $1,500. And as you can appreciate, all our life savings are depleted. We have really no funds even available at the moment to have that rear tree removed, which is also a consideration as to why it hasn't been removed yet.
Okay. $20,000 to fix a drainage system. Is it your proposal that we pay for the removal of both trees as well as $20,000 to fix the drainage system?
No, that's not our proposal. Our proposal is to have you remove the tree that is on township property, and we will simultaneously remove the rear tree. That's the only thing we're asking for at this point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yes, hello. Thank you for coming today and meeting with us. I read through the letter that you sent and appreciate the presentation today. I have just a couple of questions for clarification. When you met with the township, on one area it says that they talked about the tree being significant, and then you also indicated that you've continued to follow up the township, and at that point they stopped communicating with you. Is that a sort of fair summary that you've heard from them just once or twice during the process?
I'd say we've heard from them more than once or twice. They've sent out various crews to scope the township sewer line, and they have responded to us kind of with the same dead end answer, which was, there's nothing we can do for you. It's your problem. We'll clear out the township sewer pipe and everything else is on you, with no sort of willingness to work with us on the matter, despite our desire to work together. On top of that, you may note in the documents we provided with you or provided you with, there's one section entitled email correspondence with the township, and you will find there an email sent to the township by Richard on May 8th, 2020, outlining that we are still concerned with the tree and we'd like to talk about working together to get it removed. And that email went unanswered. And not 2 months later, this latest disaster happened on our property on July 1st. So I would say that they have communicated with us ineffectively. They have not taken steps to address our concerns or come out to meet with us. In fact, they've declined our invitations to come out to meet with us, as you'll also see in the email correspondence we've sent. And they've just repeatedly said to us, the tree will not be removed. There's nothing we can do or nothing we're willing to do.
Okay, thank you for that. I have another question was, you indicate the cost and the problem with the drainage. If we were to remove the tree and have the tree removed, do you feel that would solve the drainage issue, or are there other issues that would now have to be fixed because of potential damage that maybe these roots have caused? Because removing a tree would mean also trying to remove the roots. So I'm just trying to get a sense of what you think your costs have been so far because of the tree, and what kind of damage you're thinking that is still going to be there after the tree might be removed.
Right. So yeah, as we mentioned before, the figure that we have spent to date is about $17,000, and this includes various trades to deal with the issues resulting from the tree root blockages, as well as loss of rent due to our last tenants moving out. And really, we are fully aware that once you remove the tree, there is going to be still roots below the surface. We appreciate that. But I mean, we know that if this tree is allowed to continue to grow, these problems are going to continue, as we have shown by some of the evidence we've provided in the package we sent out. So, I mean, there is definitely going to be further, even with the tree removal, yes, there is going to still be further costs to ourselves personally to clear out whatever is left underground from our property, and potentially, yes, have to repair and or replace damaged pipes, especially our perimeter drainage pipes that are perforated, because the damage, since we haven't even been able to clear all of the roots out yet, the damage is as yet unknown. But even just to dig to locate some of the ways in to get at these roots is going to cost us at least $7,000 was the the minimum quote we were given verbally by one of the drainage companies this past week.
Okay, and last thing, so just to confirm, you're asking for us to remove the tree, not asking us for, at this point, to pay for some of the other damages. You just want the tree gone. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. At this point in time, we need the tree removed, and we need it removed now. We needed it removed over a year ago, and we wouldn't even be in the position we are today, but we can't control that. Our claim for damages has already been denied by the township for the previous, one of the previous incidents that occurred. All we are concerned with is removing the tree, letting us live in peace. We'll remove the other tree. And then, you know what? Yeah, we would love to have an honest and open conversation with the township about the fairness and the equity of this situation and how they can help us to remedy the damage on our property. But as of right now, please, we are asking, please remove the tree.
Okay.
What else do we need to do to get you to remove the tree? Please just tell us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question. How long have you owned the property?
We bought it in 2015. It was November or December. We moved in February of 2016.
And how old is the tree?
We don't know. It was
No one can really tell us.
So it's more than. 5
It's
years
older
old.
than the house. We know
Yeah,
that for
okay.
sure. And the house was built in 2006.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks. Councilor Richter? And then Councilor Anderson.
Sorry, I'm just getting my mic turned on here. So if the house was built in 2006, was it built new at that point? Like, or was it, so was the drainage system that's in there in the house now leading to the storm sewer that's blocked, was that put in new at that time?
That's our understanding. It is.
Because at that time, the heritage building that is the Tracy Cakes building, as people know it as, was moved to its current location. And then our house was built in its current location. So as far as we know, yes, it was a brand new build.
It was a brand new, and that included all the piping. And you have documentation of that from inspections and whatnot?
We've applied for the as-is through the city.
We're waiting on that documentation from the township.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Councilor Arneson?
Yes, thank you, Worship, and thank you very much for coming today. I live just down the street from there and also just happen to exercise if you see a bunch of sweaty people running around the five corners there. So they are lovely trees, but I do understand that their root system is quite invasive. I did have a couple of questions of clarification. So based on what you're saying, just to be certain, it sounds like what you're asking, at least for today, is that this removal of the tree will mitigate future damage. You know that there's already things you probably need to remedy, but that's what this is about. And I just had a question about potential insurance, whether or not that would be something that might be covered.
Our insurance is covering the damages to the basement suite, but they will not cover any repairs to any piping or anything like that.
So they cover the damage as a result of water in the suite, but they don't cover the cause of that damage. So in this case, it's the tree roots blocking our pipes. So all the costs for any repairs associated with the pipe system itself and the drainage system and the storm drain that was overflowed and what have you, any digging up of our yard that needs to be done, that's all on us. That is no coverage by insurance, as is customary of insurance policies. Yeah.
That's infrastructure from their point of view. And then so finally, what you're really then in the end asking for is the removal of the tree and its replacement by what you consider to be a more appropriate tree that won't continue to cause issues for you.
Correct.
And further away from the lines itself, because they are within a few meters to the sanitary line.
If anyone was able to take a look at the Dropbox link that we also had emailed out earlier in the week, we have some more pictures of the tree in there where you can see just how close it is to our home and just the enormous size of it and how far the canopy reaches, which indicates the enormity of the root system below ground. willow trees are also water seekers. It's an extremely moist area that we live in, and it's really prime for a tree like this to thrive. So it's not surprising that it's grown to such an enormous size, but you'll also notice in some of the documentation we provided that there are ways of preventing tree roots from getting out of control, such as coppicing a tree or pollarding it or pruning it back aggressively when it's dormant. And another large concern of ours is that despite knowing about the issues that were occurring on our property, the township's stated policy is that they are responsible for maintaining and care of trees on municipal property. And not one time has anyone come to do any sort of maintenance on that tree. And in fact, we have done the maintenance on the tree, including having it pollarded, having it trimmed the whole way around so that it doesn't impede 216th Street or the entrance to our driveway, which is all on township property. Nobody has taken care of the tree except for us. And research shows that there could have been something done to prevent this tree from getting out of control the way it is, but nothing has ever been done despite our repeated requests for help. And at this point, I hope you can appreciate that we just, for our own peace of mind going forward and just based on everything that's happened to us, we just would like the tree removed at this point. We don't hate trees. We love trees. We love nature. But we can replace the tree. It can be replaced. And, I'd also like to point out that every day acres upon acres of trees are being cleared for urban development and nobody bats an eye. And we're asking for the removal of one damaging tree and its replacement.
Thank you. Thank you. You made that clear. So I've got one more question. Councillor Ferguson. And then we'll wrap this up. Councillor Ferguson.
Okay, I'm on. Okay, thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Hayter, for coming. Richard and Stephanie, I'm familiar with the area because I used to live up the hill on South Ridge Crescent. I think most of my colleagues have asked the question. We've written a lot of notes down, and we appreciate you coming. I guess the main thing that we're all asking for is you just simply want the tree down. That's your ask right now today.
Correct.
So I won't ask any more questions because every other question is being asked, but thank you for coming again.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. See, Councillor Long and Councillor Richter, did you have some new information you need to ask a question? Councillor Long?
Your worship, I've had my hand up.
Oh, no, sorry, I haven't seen it.
Well, I don't know if it shut itself
Okay.
down.
Anyways, if you have a question that's new information, I think their request is very, very basic. They want it removed.
Well, no, I wanted to speak to the delegation, and I've had my
Go
hand
ahead.
up quite a while. There must be some technical glitch.
Here.
Can I ask you, we've only started receiving documentation from you as of July the 8th, right? So last Wednesday, I believe. So I'm just letting you know that we're just sort of finding out about this really in the last week or two, whereas it sounds like you've had a terrible experience for a number of months, even years, you're saying. I was just going to say I haven't seen a report from staff or any response from our staff on your issue, and I think we should certainly be getting that. Council should be getting explanation from our staff, and so. Just wanted you to be rest assured that we're going to ask for that, and we'll get to the bottom of this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And if we could just point out, we don't wish to bring this issue to the level that we brought it to today. We find this extremely embarrassing, distressing, that information about our personal situation and our property is now being made public. And we had held out for hope that the township would work with us. And I guess we waited too long, but, we just really feel that we have no choice at this point, and that we are, legitimate in our concerns and our belief that we haven't really been treated fairly up to this point.
Thank you. Councillor Richter.
Yes, I just have one more question of clarification, and it's with regards to your actual delegation request. Where you said you want the nuisance tree removed immediately, got that message loud and clear. But then it also says, and pay reparations for financial burden to property owners. I don't have a clear sense of what exactly it is you want by the last half of that sentence. And I'd like you to clarify that if you could, please.
Sure. So If you can understand the past couple of weeks since July 1st, we've been under an extreme amount of stress and distress, and sort of everything's been happening really quickly. And in our haste to prepare this delegation today, when I first filled out that delegation request, I wanted to focus on removing the tree, as well as talking about having the township take some responsibility for the financial burden that has been placed on us as a family. But since I submitted that, which I believe was last Wednesday, which would have been the 7th or the 8th, I'm sorry, I can't think of the date. We have sort of diverted our focus to the more pressing issue at hand, which is just having the tree removed. So I apologize for the conflicting information there.
Oh, okay, so is it your intent that once the tree's gone, that's it, it's over and done? Or are you going to be coming back on the township for financial help?
I think we'd like to have a discussion about it after we see that the tree has been removed, yes.
Okay, so a discussion, we're having a discussion now. Can you be a little more clear?
Just to see how bad the pipes have been damaged.
We'll have a little bit more, I guess, clarity and information on what steps need to be taken to fix the damage on our property going forward. And I think until we can be certain of that, it's hard to discuss exactly what we're going to be asking the township to consider.
Okay, so from your perspective, even if the tree's gone, it's not done.
It may not be,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
there's
Thank you.
repercussions. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And just, there is a process in place that, you know, if this, you know, obviously, I need to mention, this will be referred back to staff to get, so council can be brought up to speed on it. But there's a process that is long established by council policy on damage to personal property, and that you can go through that process. And I'm sure that'll be made available to you. Sometimes the answers aren't what we always want to hear, but there is a process in place that is well recognized, and we go through our due diligence too. So that'll be made available to you also. And so I think we've heard you loud and clear. We'll be asking for something from staff.
Point of information.
Councilor Wong?
Yeah,
Councilor Wong.
I just now, I don't know if there's something wrong with my granite, because I've just received now the distribution list for today, and there is a memo. Item 1 actually is a memo about it, so maybe
we need some time.
they could get a copy of it before they leave today. At least we know what we're just finding out now. Thank you.
That's right. Yeah, we need to take some time.
It's on
The roots are growing, but I think if we take a little bit of time in the next couple of weeks between the next meeting, I'm sure they'll grow a little bit, but not enough to exacerbate the damages.
yes.
So we do need to do our due diligence, and we appreciate you coming out and bringing your concerns to our attention. And we certainly will be working with staff and get to the business on this one. So thank you.
Thank you. And please don't feel free to come in and
Sure.
meet with us on our property at any time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your
Thank you.
Take care. Okay. Now we move on to reports to council. And E1 is development permit application number 100912. And this is 7900 block of 206th Street. Can I have a motion, please?
So move, Ferguson.
It's moved. And is there a seconder? We don't have Councilor Long seconds it.
Second.
It's a DP. I'm just going to ask the clerk. I don't need to ask for submissions on this. We've had that.
No, this was done with the submissions we're mailing.
Done the written submissions. And apparently, we have not received any submissions. So I see no hands, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it carries unanimously. Thank you. Go back. There we go. Okay, we move on to E2, and this is proposed extension of Fraser sewage area at 1241 200th Street. And could I have a motion, please?
So move.
Davis, is there a seconder? Councilor Long. Discussion? Seeing none, Councilor Richter. Well, Councilor Davis, if you just push your hand, it might be a raised hand. It might take a second. There it goes. Councilor Richter, you're on.
Okay, I wanted to know why this is needed, what the size of the property is, and is a subdivision being anticipated for this property?
I'll ask Mr. Seffi if you can provide background.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to, with your permission, Your Worship, share screen so I can just
Yes.
bring up the slide.
Thank you.
Can you see that, Your Worship?
Yep.
Yes.
So the property is 1241, the one that's shaded, Your Worship, on the west side of 200th Street, in the 1200 block of 200th Street. It has sanitary sewer fronting the property. There have been previous cases where council and the Metro Vancouver Board have approved other properties. Those are the ones that are shown with the purple outline or border. So this actually follows that pattern, that properties that are fronting 200th Street have been successful in obtaining both council and the regional board's approval to be able to not necessarily extend, but rather just tap into an existing sewer that fronts their property. So the staff, I guess, discussions with the applicant have not resulted in any issues in terms of maybe failure of the system that they have in place currently, or any environmental concerns. Staff is not aware of any. It's just a request that has come in and is being processed on that basis.
So there's no anticipation of subdivision as a result of this at this stage?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Yes, thank you very much. I had a similar question, like, is this a one-time for the property, obviously? Are all those properties along there going to be one-times? Like every one of them will have to come on 200th, I guess?
Your Worship, the regional growth strategy, the Metro Vancouver regional growth strategy that was adopted by the Metro Vancouver Board several years ago, and each municipality endorsed it. As you can see, shows the area that this property is part of as a sewage extension area. Now, it is outside of the urban containment boundary, so both our OCP as well as the regional growth strategy do not anticipate any further development. But in recognition of the fact that there is a line that it goes from what is known as the High Point development along 4th Avenue all the way north through Brookswood Fernridge and into the city of Langley to join the regional system. In recognition of the existence of that pipe, there was a recognition that there could be properties that front 200th Street to be able to connect into that system. That's the sewage extension area that Metro Vancouver recognizes. There are two conditions, however. One is that it's in compliance with the land use plan of the RGS. So there is no contemplation of anything other than rural. And the second part is that Metro Vancouver has to take a look at the capacity in their sewage treatment plants and systems and pipes and conveyance systems, and make sure that there's no restrictions in that regard as well. So once those two issues have been addressed, then the Metro Vancouver Board can approve it.
Okay, so every time somebody along there wants it and they're out of the regional growth, well, they're out, like you say, they're out of the OCP area in Brookswood there, they'll have to apply.
That's
basically.
correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Ferguson.
Yes, it's not. I know it's not part of our Brookswood Fern Ridge Community Plan. I want to know, I know when the line went down to High Point that there was an opportunity for residents to hook up. Do we know how many other folks, or I don't mean you may not know, how many other property owners might have hooked up to that line? Through the chair, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, there have been a number, Your Worship. Exactly, it looks like along 200th Street from 8th Avenue to, I guess, the boundary of the neighborhood plan, which is, I guess, 20th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 properties.
Okay, now I just wanted to know, like, because it can be a benefit, and it's a win-win for both sides. I know it can be expensive, but over time, it certainly is something that's a benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other questions from council, so I will call the question. All those in favor of E2?
Favor? Aye.
And opposed? Carries unanimously. Move on to E3, and this is a report to replace the self-containing breathing apparatus. Order there. It's no cost of this year's budget. It's just putting the order in advance. Can I have a motion, please?
So move.
Council Davis, second by Council Whitmarsh. Council Rick, your question.
Yeah, this is almost $1 billion. So I'm just wondering, or sorry, $1 million. I'm just
$1 million.
Yeah, $1 million, 960,000. I'm just wondering how many units are we getting for this amount of money? And will the units be distributed throughout all the halls that we have?
I
and
see.
The third question is, have the old units expired?
Chief Gamble is participating. If Chief Gamble could respond.
Yes, sorry about that. Answer to the second question, yes, it's for all 7 fire halls, both career and paid call. And we have, I want to say 100, just give me 1 minute here. We have, there's a mask for every employee. So the 111 pay call members, the 90 career staff, and then the packs, there's 115. I believe sorry, I just had the number in my hand here and I seem to have misplaced it. I just want to give you guys, give you the correct number. That's, sorry. I send you the exact number so I don't take up too much more of your time. I think I've misplaced the number.
So it's basically that every person employed by the fire, all the fire halls will have, as firefighters, will have a new mask.
Yes, what we've done is it's just an extension of the COVID, but it's a more sanitary to supply everybody a mask that's fitted to them because they come in different sizes. Currently, we basically stick to one size except for the really odd sizes that we have to go to, and that's a very small number. But what we also found is that you extend the life of the mask specifically because each employee is looking after their own mask, and so that you reduce the amount of wear and tear on them. And you can, I know from my past experience, we extended the life considerably by doing this, and it deals with the sanitary side of it too. It's as you can appreciate, we're under a different standard today than we were when I first started in the fire service.
So our intent is to give everybody their own personal mask. Now, what is the expected lifespan of these personal masks? These
are all the air packs nowadays they work to a 15-year cycle, that's why we're having to replace ours. The bottles they're what they call a composite wrap. You can't go beyond 15 years with them. So everything is basically matched to that, both the backpack, and the mask, and so they're all expected for approximately a 15-year life cycle. That's where some of the manufacturers actually warranty them right to the 15 years.
Okay, and so what if somebody is getting a personal mask now and they retire within 2 to 3 years? Does the mask go with them, or does the mask get come back to us and get recycled somehow?
It comes back to us. It's repurposed then, so that we,
okay,
it's just like we do now with the current system.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Davis.
Yes, thank you very much. A couple questions there that I had answered. It says here in the background, the fire department, along with the funding department, commenced the budgetary process for the replacement of the SCBs 14 years ago to ensure funding was available. Is this something, and now the fire chief is requesting that the money be authorized for this purchase source of funding with the equipment reserve fund. Would this not be something that would be in the budget, or is that 14 years ago, put it in the budget this year? Because I would think that this mask that is needed is a piece of equipment that should go, it has to go with every firefighter out. Why would we have to set aside a special funding envelope, or no, not envelope, but why would we, is it going to be in 14 more years? Are we going to be able to have the funding there also? Like, I don't understand why we'd have to, I'm just a little confused. Is there just a comment or two on that?
Yeah, so what we'll do is once we purchase these, we start building the fund to replace them. We started that 14 years ago. So by next year, when they hit the 15, that we replace them. And then following that, we start putting money aside. It's so we don't have this, we're not coming to council and say, we need to replace all these packs at 15 years and we haven't budgeted. So we've been slowly building that up each year, and now it's the time to replace it. The process right now is the reason why we're asking for it now is they take, it takes a while to go through the process of selecting the pack, because there's different manufacturers out there. And then also the manufacturers, they don't carry those, they don't have them in a storeroom, all these for the amount that we need in their storeroom. So we need to place the order now, and then they build that order for us so that when the next year comes, we have the packs ready to go and put into service before they expire, before the present ones expire. Because if they expire, we run into a bit of a problem with it.
Okay, so it's going to be in 15 years, 14 years. It's going to be pre-approved, pre-authorized, and the funds will be slowly built up. So we just maybe didn't see it in the budget, but it's there, and it's in general firefighter fund. Okay, thank you, sir.
Actually, excuse me, but council did see that 14 years ago and started putting that money aside. So each year we've been putting money into that. It's been in where the equipment reserves is, where the fire trucks come out of, and our radio system that the new portables and mobile radios we had. Just for the earlier question, it's 149 SCBAs that we're purchasing. So just so you have the number.
It's a lot of masks, but we
mask and air and the actual, it's a pack itself. It's what when you see a firefighter go in into a building, that on the backpack, it's got a bottle, and it holds the bottle and all the mechanisms that make it work, the regulators and that. And then the mask is a separate piece, but it's part of the whole complete unit.
Thank you very much.
I remember that 14 years ago.
Excellent. Yeah, just to be clear, all we're doing is pre-approving, which would normally have been a line item on the budget with the funding source. So because of the reasons given by the chief, is that we need to pre-approve this so they can get the order in, so that it arrives in a timely manner. So I think that's all this motion is doing. So with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. We move on to E4, and it's a policy update to control nuisance animals policy. And just ask for a motion.
Move.
Councillor Whitmarsh and seconder, Councillor Davis. Any questions? Councillor Richter?
Sorry. Yes, the policy is fine because it allows us some flexibility, I believe. But I was just curious about isolated areas, and one came to my attention last week, 43rd Avenue, just off 272nd Street. And I went down and had a look at that this past week, and it's quite clear that the township has done substantive mitigation work in that area. And so under other business, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to put forward a notice of motion that we get a case assessment of the 43rd Avenue situation and whether or not we should move to the next level of mitigation. So that was just my comment. I see in the report that it does cost us more to mitigate, but we've been doing that. And I'd like to get a handle on exactly how much more all this mitigation does cost. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Worship. So I know that this was a direction to look at our control of nuisance animals policy, and this is somewhat of a housekeeping exercise. However, I did want to use this opportunity, and I know it's really an engineering report having to do with protection of our infrastructure and you know, the valuable roadways, et cetera, that we've invested in to make sure that they're not damaged by excessive flooding. However, I did wonder whether or not we could include information. So I'd actually like to move that we consider information to be forwarded to staff regarding this policy. All of council, I believe, received an email yesterday having to do with the timing of the work that will be done. I know that there are regulatory standards from the province, I believe, but also from stormwater management. And this is just meant to address the issue of when it is optimum to remove the actual dam structure for the purpose of ensuring that roadways don't get flooded, but at the same time, there's enough water left, both for the wetland preservation as well as fish passage. So I just wanted to put that in there in the event that that could be something reviewed by staff, because my recollection is one of our initiatives going forward is climate mitigation, and wetlands are very important for that. So to find the right balance between the protection of our infrastructure as well as to make sure that the wetlands remain viable.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Thank you very much. On page, the report, page 6, and I understand summary of housekeeping changes. I understand it's housekeeping, a lot to do with housekeeping, but in 4.5, it added, if other less invasive options prove unsuccessful, machine removal of dams, debris, and blockages as necessary. So if they're unsuccessful, we have to add that in. And then on the financial implications, it says the recommendations made in this report can be implemented within existing operation budgets. Is our operating budget a little bit flexible there? Because from one year to the next, and then I see the map here of all the suspected, I thought I saw it, the suspected beaver dams. I suspect there's a lot more beaver dams that aren't on here, that are on here, because it can get kind of technical to get into a beaver dam with a machine if you have to go through somebody else's property and all that sort of stuff. So I'm just wondering the flexibility on the budget, the existing operating budget. And I don't know if that's a question.
Okay,
maybe that's just a comment.
I think there is. They keep.
Yeah.
I think there is. And we are trying to get the beavers to register their dams.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. And it's difficult. All right. See no further questions. I'll call the question on On E4, all those in favor?
Aye.
And it carries unanimously. We move on to E5, and this is the 2019 audited consolidated financial statements. To receive and accept these statements for inclusion in the annual report and statement of financial information. We do have, I'd like to welcome, see Mr. Brandon Ma is in attendance. You saw his name earlier. And we have staff from the finance department. Mr. Ma is with KPMG, and we're responsible for the auditing of our statements. So I will ask for a motion. Councillor Kunst and a seconder. Councillor Long, and I have some questions. Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question, if I may, Mr. Mayor, through the chair. This audited consolidated finance, we had another supplemental email today that this is a preliminary report and that the auditors are not able to physically come in. I was just wondering that how that, number one, affects the consolidated year-end financial statements, and number two, how it affects departments like inventory and physical requirements regarding accounting and making accounting for certain inventory items, if I may, through the chair.
Sure, I will turn that over to Mr. Bracken with Ms. Sinclair. I see Mr. Nam is available.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. The situation is Ms. Sinclair has been called away. Her father has suffered an illness, so Mr. Nam is on the line if we need him. And of course, Brandon's here as well from KPMG. In answer to the question, then the challenge we've had this year in the COVID years has been the very compressed time frame. All parties have worked extremely hard to make the deadlines in place. In fact, I think Brandon and Sam and Karen were working over the weekend, and I was only partially involved, so it took a lot of effort to pull it together. The document you received with the package was the draft. This document represents the final. The process would be from here, it would be received and accepted and then put out to public consultation with approval to occur on the meeting of the 27th. Why the 27th is because we must adopt this document by the end of August. And as we have no further meetings scheduled for the month of August, we'd have to get it done by July 27th to call a special meeting. As to the specific question as to inventory, the document would be current, I would say, until the last inventory we conducted with the numbers that we have. But inventory is a relatively small part in terms of our ongoing work as to the tangible capital assets. So that is current as well as in terms of the year end for the audit itself. So it's very current, and you can see the increase in our assets growing, I think, from about $1.6 to $1.65 billion, and as well revenues still remaining relatively healthy.
My supplemental question, if I may, Mr. Mayor, is the fact that I wanted to also know if the provincial they keep changing their rules regarding municipalities, budgets, inventories, and financial statements, whether they have had new rules or new challenges with the COVID as well.
Your Worship, it continues to be an evolution. I would look at it as more of a journey than an end result. The short answer to your questions is yes. In the changing environment, there's always adaptations and revisions. Combined with that, in the traditional environment where there was a bit more stability, we've also seen a bit of an increase in the reporting structures as we go forward. So the short answer is the challenges we're experiencing are not unique. However, due to the hard work of Brandon, Sam, and Karen, we've got to this point where we're maintaining our schedule.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richter.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I have a few questions here. I'd like to start with, this is quite a lengthy report, and I did go through it on the weekend, but I noted that we did get a revised version of it first thing, well, not even first thing this morning. I think it came through mid-morning. And because of the length of the report, I have not had a chance to review the final version that came through. So I would like to have the changes that were made identified or highlighted from the draft that we had in our package on 30. That's question number one. Question number two, with regards to the notes to the consolidated financial statement on page 13, 2A talks about the different societies that we have. And I'm going to put forward a motion I guess after this, if it's okay with you, Mr. Mayor, that the council receive a history of all of these societies. There was one noted there, the TOL Facilities Development and Housing Society, which was incorporated on April 3rd, 2019. And did council pass a motion on that? Because I don't recall it if we did. So that's why I'd like to find out. It seems to me we've got several of these societies now, and I'm not sure that we need as many as we do. On page 14, under item number F, non-financial assets, 3 natural resources, and 4 works of art and cultural and historic assets. The notes there indicated that natural resources that have not been purchased are not recognized as assets. Yet we do use streams and ditches and so on as drainage assets. And also with the works of art, we've got quite an extensive collection in our museum. And I'm just wondering why we wouldn't have included that as an asset as well. And then finally, over on page 36 of the report, there is a pie chart there showing the 2019 township expenses. I found it curious that recreation, culture, and parks is the largest slice of the pie now. It's no longer police. And that other is almost as big as recreation, culture, and parks. So I'm thinking we need to have more of an explanation of what is sitting in those slices, because they are clearly the largest pieces of the pie. So those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Backey, do you?
Oops. Your Worship, I think we'll go through each one if we could. And for the first one, in terms of the changes, I'll refer to Sam if he's out there, and Brandon can help as well in terms of the difference between the document from the Thursday to the current one, and then we'll go through the rest.
Yes, so regarding the changes from the updated package this morning, the difference is with the addition of the auditor, independent audit report, as well as their audit report toward the end. This was completed basically over the weekend with the help of Brendan and his team. The one changes within the financial statement that appear was due to a TCA completion. As we complete our register, there was some adjustment that the KPMG noticed that we made correction on. That got adjusted within our financial statement, which you will see some changes throughout the report.
Okay.
In terms of the graphs on the township expense on the other, within the segmented report on page
The pie chart was on page 36.
Yes, so the chart is made up of numbers in page 30th. So we have each segment showing. So we have police, fire, transportation, storm, and recreation. Utility is made up of the stormwater, water, sewer, and solid waste. And the other category is everything else. So general government, facility, COMDEF, and that's it. Stormwater is separated on the chart as well.
So Sam, can you comment on the size of Parks and Rec? I think the councillor's question is really police and fire used to be by far the largest. Now RCP is coming up to be very significant. Could that be because of, say, some capital project that was included, or do you have any additional information?
Part of the expenses, we do have recreation and parks together, and part of that is capital expenditure within PSAP. There are certain categories that are not capitalized. When they are not capitalized, it becomes non-TCA. And within our financial statement, it falls under these expense category. So in a year where there is larger projects that have these component of non-TCA, it will skew our expenses a little bit from a financial statement in terms of what may be perceived as operating expenses.
So Sam, restated then, if we were to acquire a large piece of property that was for parkland purposes, that would inflate the expenditure, but doesn't reflect the operating expenses. It includes the capital expenses. Is that correct?
So from the expenses here, it would have to be a non-capital nature to be included.
So sorry, Sam, okay, I see what you're saying. So if we acquired parkland, then it wouldn't include that. So then we return to the original question then is if it doesn't include capital items, then what would the expenditures be for? Because park, recreation, culture, and parks traditionally has not been that big of a slice of the pie chart.
There are certain information or certain expenses that we spend in the capital realm, which may include studies of plans for an upgrade to a recreation facility, for an example. That might not lead to an actual capital item. In those situations, we would categorize it as a non-TCA, which would appear in the operating expenses.
Oh, correct. But going back to the base question then is the traditional amount of the recreation, culture, and parks expenses typically are a smaller piece of the pie. And if it isn't the capital, which could it then include perhaps some of the carrying charges for the capital, or if there was borrowing or things of that nature, because I think that would explain the significant increase of the pie. Yes,
we do have multiple borrowing for recreation and parks. Parks specifically, they have roughly 12.5 million sitting in parks. So that is part of the expense category in terms of debt expenses.
So as it flows through before it becomes capitalized, thank you. While you're on the line, then question 3 regarded the classification of natural resources and assets, particularly art. Can you comment on that? Are you able to comment?
Yes, so there has been some ongoing discussion in terms of capitalizing natural resources. At the moment, there is still no requirement for natural resources capitalization. There's some discussion among the profession in terms of how we might look toward capitalizing it, but at the moment, we don't have anything. I'm not sure if Brendan, being on the line, if you want to comment some regarding that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll provide a brief comment both around the natural resources as well as the art and the historic treasures. Currently, under the public sector accounting standards, it does not require a capitalization of those that you don't purchase, and those where you may have inherited them, those that are basically publicly protected and you provide for display, primarily because of the cost and benefits and value of accounting for such items and being able to reasonably and verifiably quantify them is quite difficult, and that cost benefit is being weighed. So the accounting standards don't require these to be recorded from a financial statement point of view, but certainly recognize that in terms of managing and operating the township, that there is value to these items. They're just not recorded for financial statement purposes.
And Your Worship, then returning to the outstanding question of the societies, the society in question that was referenced was for we'll call loosely the term affordable housing. We had previously worked with council and historically had some resolutions to pursue the potential for affordable housing, particularly in the area of the University District, through the Langley Facilities Society. Working with BC Housing, it was determined that a sole or single purpose society is more appropriate as it insulates the project from other dynamics and specifically some of the qualification criteria that exist. So it was a simple matter of actually having one society controlling another, as I recall. So this was put in place, I guess, as a derivative of the previous Langley Facilities Society authorization, and then reflects the fact that we have a single purpose one if the matters proceed. At this point, we still don't have any news as we continue to work with BC Housing, I guess advancing incrementally to try to figure out what projects or what opportunities might exist from the BC housing world to provide funding for not only the location I mentioned, but anywhere in the township, if in fact it makes some sense or can reach a level of economic viability to qualify for their assistance.
Okay, then. So am I understanding this correctly then, that the TOL Facilities Development and Housing Society wasn't created by council? It was created by one of the other societies that was created by council?
Correct. It was created by, effectively, for our purposes, it was created by the Langley Facilities Society, which is one of council's societies. I mean, it's a derivative. It builds into the one above it, which builds into the township's financial reporting.
Okay. Well, and if that's the case, Mr. Mayor, I still think I'd like to put forward a motion after this one is dealt with to get a history or a chronology report to council on these societies. I was surprised to see we have as many as we do. And just as a follow-up as well, on the chart on page 36, the explanation that was given is that meaning that this pie chart has changed just this year, or has that, or is this an ongoing trend in the pie chart as a result of reporting requirements?
So, Your Worship, I think the best way to conceptualize it is that this is a bit of an anomaly because of the funds throwing in for the borrowing that may end up being for capital projects. It would be an anomaly unless we continue to either borrow or to build at the rates we've been talking about. Ordinarily, the percentage would be lower. And keep in mind, this reflects not really budget numbers, but financial accounting numbers. So it's looking backwards, not forwards. So an answer then, I think in the absence of those sorts of projects, this would look to be more traditionally in line, because you're correct. It is usually police and fire that dominate our budget pie.
Yeah, protective services, but that's kind of the reason why we were created, wasn't it? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. And I see no further questions, so I'm going to call the question on E5. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And opposed? No one opposed. It carries unanimously. I want to thank staff and Mr. Ma from KPMG for all their hard work over the weekend to get this to us in a timely manner. And I know there's a lot of effort into it, a lot of work, not just this weekend, but over a long period of time. So thank you very much. Please convey that to Ms. Sinclair. All right. Councillor Richter, did you wish to make a motion?
I just have a comment as well as this this motion that I'd like to put forward. I'm wondering if in future years we could get the final package when we get our package, instead of getting the auditor's statements like an hour before the meeting or 2 hours before the meeting. That seems a little bit of a tight turnaround for me.
Certainly, I think staff made note of that.
Okay.
And again, I think because of our situation with COVID, it just causes certain challenges, but hopefully by next year we have those worked out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the motion I'd like to do is to ask staff for a background report on the history and chronology and purposes of all the societies, as well as the assets held by them. It seems to me from the report that there are some of these societies that aren't active anymore, so why do we keep them? So my motion is just to get a background report on all the societies.
Their seconder, Councillor Davis seconds. Any further discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, move on to bylaws first and second reading. There's one. F1 is rezoning application number 100581, development permit application number 101118, flat architecture, bylaw 5622. I have a motion, please.
Move Ferguson.
Councillor Ferguson moves it. Seconder. The second. Councillor Kunst and Councillor Richter. See your hand up. Richter.
Sorry, I didn't take it down from the last time.
All right, I see no discussion, so I'm going to call the question on F1. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries unanimously. Move on to bylaws for first, second, and third reading. Oh, sorry, there are none. Move on to bylaws for consideration at third reading. H1 is rezoning application number 100578, development permit application number 101111, Centerra West End 2.0 Developments Limited, bylaw 5583. Could I have a motion, please?
I'll move it.
Councillor Long moves it, seconded by Councillor Kunz. Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carries unanimously. And move on to bylaws for final adoption. This is highway closure, dedication, removal, and disposal. Sand Hill, bylaw number 5621. Can I have a motion, please?
Move Ferguson.
Councillor
Second,
Ferguson moves.
Davis.
Councillor Davis seconds. Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Richter is opposed.
Councillor Richter is opposed. And any others?
Opposed.
Councillor Arneson?
Yeah.
Councillor Richter opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Move on to I2. This is rezoning application number 100450. Development permit application numbers 100825 and 101057. I need separate motions on all three of those on bylaw 5484 and then the DP. So on the bylaw 5484, could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Councillor Woodward moves second. I didn't miss a second. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Marsh.
Discussion on the bylaw. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed?
Opposed.
Councillor Richter's opposed. Motion carries. Now, development permit application number 100825. I need a motion on that.
I'll move that.
Councillor Long moves it. Second. Seconder.
Ferguson,
Councillor Ferguson. Discussion. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed?
Richter is opposed.
Councillor Richter is opposed. That DP passes. The next one is development permit 101057. Could I have a motion on that development permit?
Moved.
Councillor Whitmarsh moves it. Seconder. Councillor Kunz. Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed?
Opposed.
Councillor Richter opposed. That DP carries. Thank you. And then move on to correspondence. There are two pieces of correspondence.
Move receipt of both.
Moved by Councillor Richter, receipt, and second by Councillor Davis. Any discussions? Now I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And carries. And I'll move on. There was some requests there. I see nothing. So I'll move on to the Mayor and Council report. Good evening, everyone out there in Zoom land. The Aldergrove Canada Day Parade took place on Wednesday, July the 1st. It was a specially planned COVID-aware event. And although the weather could have been better, it was a pretty rainy, cool day, it was well attended by spectators practicing safe physical distancing. Councillor Ferguson and I weathered the rain. Actually, I think Councillor Ferguson was his convertible with the top down, so he did pretty good. Yeah, we weathered the rain. I was in my warm, comfy pickup truck. And had a great time in the drive past parade. And just to mention, I was pleasantly surprised on the number of people that were out in the lawn chairs and waving and really enjoying the fact that there was a parade. Councillors Whitmarsh and Kuntz sent regrets as they were unable to participate. And again, I want to thank the organizers and the volunteers for arranging this special event. Another special Aldergrove event that will be done differently this year is the Aldergrove Fair, which has been running for more than a century. The event is celebrating its 108th year, and the celebration of all things Aldergrove and agriculture will be going virtual later this month. On July 18 and 19, the public can visit virtual.aldergrovefair.ca for entertainment, exhibits, contests, and pictures from the Canada Day Parade. Thanks again to the Aldergrove Festival Days Society and everyone who is helping show our community spirit. COVID-19 update. Metro local governments have drafted a letter to the federal government in support of maintaining the closure of the U.S. border. BC has been able to flatten the curve and the coronavirus due to all of us following the guidance of the provincial health officer, Dr. Bonnie Henry. Local governments are being proactive in taking actions to support our local economy and businesses. By delaying the border crossing reopening until later this summer, we're taking action to minimize a possible second wave. We encourage residents to stay local and enjoy travel within the province. We have one more council meeting prior to the summer break, and that'll be on July 27th. And I'd ask everyone to stay safe and stay healthy and enjoy this summer vacation. As I know in July, a lot of people have already taken advantage. And I have tried to book campsites here and there, and I know that the province of British Columbia is staying home because they're all full. So enjoy the summer. And save that. Go back. Participants list. Lost. And is there anything to add to Council? Councilor Ferguson.
Oh, yes. Well, first of all, yeah, our top was down during the rain, so that's good. We had a good time in the parade. But I had something under Metro Vancouver representative, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, I just wanted to say that we're busy with the Liquid Waste Committee, and we're reminding people under the face masks and other things with the COVID, please don't flush them down the toilet. Put them in the waste, okay? And we're reminding people on a regular basis because they can clog up our pump systems and they cause a lot of damage if they get too many of them in the system. Just kind of a public service announcement, and I'll be continuing them as the months go by. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you. And I know on solid waste, we're asking that people do take care of the PPE and make sure it's put away in a safe manner. And there's concerns that we're starting to find it littering our streets and parks, and we want to make sure that people do look after it. So I know Metro is looking at ways to get that message out. So with that, I'll move on to items from prior meetings. And the following item is deferred at the June 15th regular council meeting. And so this is the 01 Alder in demolition for positive interim uses and redevelopment. And so Ms. It's been deferred to receive public consultation. I know we've received several pieces of information from the public. It's been distributed to council. And so I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Fowler. The motion was referred. Does it need to be moved?
No, the motion was simply deferred, so it's still an active motion.
Still active motion?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion is on the floor. So with this, I'll open it up to questions and comments. Councillor Ferguson, your hand is still up. Is that from before? Or is it...
No, basically, I think I'm happy with the proposal. I'll take my I'll take my hand.
Thank you. Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I want to put forward a motion to divide.
Okay, certainly move to divide. Second by Councillor Whitmarsh. So we want to divide which, just so I'm clear.
The items A, B, and D of the motion.
Okay, so those three, A, B, and D. Okay.
That's correct.
I'm just going to call a question on division. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Opposed, Richter.
Councillor Richter is opposed. Councillor Wood is opposed on division. Division carries. So we can start with, we'll go one at a time. And I do have a speakers list. I think it might be easier because of the system. If you have something to say about any one of them, we can deal with that, and then we'll move through. So it's difficult with Zoom. So Councillor Richter on A, B, or D. You might be muted.
Yeah, I'm not there. I should be unmuted now.
Yeah, there you
Yeah,
are.
I was just going to say that I think the public's spoken quite loudly on this. So we had 24 letters in our package. 83% of them said demolish. Only 2 said no, and 2 weren't quite sure, as long as it didn't cost a lot of money. Then there were the online surveys that were done, and again, I think the public has spoken very clearly. They want the building down, and I intend to respect the public's wishes on this. Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you. Now that it's been divided, I don't know, is this on division?
No, division's passed. So if any comments, again, it's difficult to manage speakers list with this system. So
the council consistency, the option of 1, 2, or 3 on B, is that what council's consistency has been designed for usage in the past? And I don't know if that is such an appropriate use of our funds as a council, just by the past usage that we've had in the last few years. And I'm not saying it's not the right or wrong thing, but I don't know if that's what we should be using. Jeff?
Thank you. So I know when we'll be voting on A, and it's good to have this discussion. When we get to B, I'm going to suggest an amendment that we leave it up to staff to come back with a funding source if if A passes. So that way, you know, I hear what you say, and so I think we can maybe deal with that with a slight amendment, but for the purpose, depending on what happens with A, of course. And it's up, all of these funding sources are still up to council's discretion. Council Whitmarsh.
Yeah, I'm assuming we're talking about A.
Yes, but if you have any comments on the other ones, you wish to say it now,
okay.
say it now.
Say whatever we want about any of them. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll talk to A and then maybe to B, but A first. I'm absolutely believing that we should be moving on, you know, demolishing the building, and I'm supportive of moving forward fairly quickly on it. I guess my question is, and wondering about, is that it talks in here about us having a community garden and some parking, and you know, I can see where some of the advantage of the parking is for us and the necessary part of that. I guess I'm not sure that we decided that the best use of that space on an interim basis was to have a community garden. And that's, for me, where some of the concern is. It's not about the speed, it's not about getting it done, because I think we need to, but this specifically states that we'll have a community garden there on that corner. And community gardens, I'm not sure that's the best thing for there, even on an interim basis. It's not always the best looking thing in a corner of a commercial space to have a big community garden. So I just wondered if it's, for me, I'd rather it not say community garden, and I'd rather it be up for us to maybe continue having that discussion on what happens and what the space will look like after demolishing it. But I certainly am supportive of moving quickly and demolishing it. On point B, the second area, I have some of the concerns that Councillor Davis has mentioned. I'm not, you know, whether this is the best place for it. I'm concerned about the funding of this, and then at the same time, we're keeping the ACCUC closed in the summer, and we haven't moved forward on opening that. That to me needs to be a priority. And yet here we are wanting to spend money on demolishing, which I'm supportive of, but it sends a weird message when we want to spend money to do that, but we don't have the resources to open up the ACCUC. So that's a concern for me as well. And so those are where I'm coming from, but absolutely we've heard, and from the public, and the building should come down.
Thank you. So I hear what you're saying on A, just a suggestion, and I'll go through the list first, is that it is prescriptive. Perhaps there are things that haven't been thought of, and so it could be, a word could be inserted if council wanted to make an amendment. That would be such as community gardens and some parking where, and that gives staff a bit of time to come back with some more information on what to do. But that's a suggestion. I'll go through the list first, and if someone wishes to make that amendment, it just gives a little more flexibility. It's not quite so prescriptive, but it allows council to make a decision. The main one is whether or not to do that.
I would agree with
demolish it. Okay, I'll go through the list first. Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I think I'd like to speak to B first. I agree with the sentiment that from my perspective, it would not be sort of our norm or our usual pattern to take money from the council contingency fund for such a purpose. And specifically this time, I think it's difficult to rationalize doing that because, as Councillor Whitmarsh referenced, we do have facilities and programming that are not able to go forward because of COVID, and yet we're taking money from that. And actually, I would say the same thing about the community grant. I realize that the money is available in a funding envelope, but I'm reserved about the fact that money set aside for a particular item, even if it becomes available, doesn't necessarily mean to me that it should just join our general funds and be used for such a purpose. So I'd actually go further and say that I'd like to make a motion that we utilize those funds that are remaining. We find another source of funding for this purpose, and we take those funds and we ask staff to review opportunities to provide recreational opportunities and programming because of the closure of our immediate closure of the recreation centers.
Thank you. So yeah, we'll get to that, but I think it can be done simply with just a referral to staff to come back with an appropriate funding mechanism, and the financing of the recreation centers it would be a separate issue. We'll hold on to that until we get through the speakers. Councillor Ferguson.
Oh yeah, I'm hearing an awful lot of discussion about some important issues, not necessarily the demolition. I think that there seems to be some clarity on that. But as far as, whether such as, I like the fact we've added such as community gardens, because it may not be community gardens, and that may attract some challenges. That's something we need to review and understand and proceed, I guess, in a manner which we may or may not have community gardens. The second thing is I guess B as well, is here we're looking at a funding model, 1, 2, 5, 75, 50, and 300, all thousands. Basically, those are all things that time sensitive, and whether we want to use those resources or what message we're sending with the COVID. So basically, I think that understanding the time sensitive or not time sensitive of item B is something that we need to explore more. And there is some, I guess, some suggestions on when the next opportunity comes to open up more community centers and provide the staffing, everything throughout, not just Langley, but the region. That they're looking at provincial, I guess, provincial guidelines or guidance. And so that's where we are right now, as to how time sensitive we are as proceeding with number B. Anyway, thank you. Those are my points.
Thank you. Councilor Woodward.
Yeah, I just want to maybe suggest we can maybe just vote on A, since we seem to be getting close to 5 votes on A, and then we debate the particulars separately, because I think we can come up with some alternatives on the funding sources, and I don't want to spend a lot of time jumping around. But on A specifically, I would have no problem with making the amendment along with Councilor Whitmarsh to soften some of that language regarding community gardens. That was intended as some ideas and some concepts for staff to consider, council to consider, local community associations and the business community to consider, to start that consultation process with them. It wasn't intended to be overly prescriptive. It was intended to start the conversation. So I think that's great if there's some concern and maybe some cost to that, the staff and the local community associations can look at some different language. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make that amendment so we can have that part of the debate over with, if that's possible.
Sure. I think we'll just, I did say we'll go through the list first, so Councilor Davis is there, and then we'll do that. And
Okay, so then I'm going to also speak to number B then. That's
sure.
Yeah, so the reason council contingency was in there wasn't overly prescriptive. As I've been watching council for many years, from what I remember and recall, council contingency is rarely ever spent in its entirety. Maybe staff can confirm that I'm incorrect on that. And so it seemed like an easy location to find some funding for this. If there was some concern about usage of reserves or where this money was going to come from. And again, it's there to show and make a proposal on some ideas to consider to potentially fund this. Not, putting the money or pre-approving it as a property tax increase was definitely not the intent. Intent is to find some existing monies that we maybe potentially rarely ever spend completely on an annual basis. Of course, fully open to amending these or changing these, with the core concept of not having it be a pre-approval for a property tax increase in the 2021 budget. And for number D, I think that's pretty non-controversial, but also in regards to the ACUCC that's come up a couple times in debate, I'd agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Arneson and the sentiment expressed by Councillor Whitmarsh to look at finding a way to use some of those funds to potentially make funding not the reason the ACUCC outdoor component is not opening. That makes sense. And then maybe potentially using just the building reserve to proceed with this demolition. If that's where we're going, and it sounds like we're getting close to moving forward with the demolition. I want to reiterate, of course, that my opinion is pretty clear that the building should come down, needs to come down. The community is overwhelmingly spoken in the last 30 days for it to come down. I don't view this as a controversial item anymore, at least not in my opinion and the feedback that I've seen and received. And I really want to ensure that this council doesn't share in the legacy of the Aldergrove Mall site, which has remained derelict for a long period of time. To me, it's not responsible to do that. So we should be not allowing that to become part of our legacy as part of this council. And I look forward to council approving removing the building. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I do see there are no more hands. Oh, it just popped up. So just on the comment on the funding suggestion came from staff is that we can just very simply do it. Other funds as determined appropriate by staff. And that would solve that whole issue without delaying if A passes. So a suggestion, I'll go to Council Long and then we'll work through the motions. Council Long?
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Well, obviously, I'm the one that wants to save the building, and I'm the one that is going to have to say something here because it's my only opportunity to say something that I feel very strongly about, and that is that this whole thing has been a very sad saga. I'm not sure why a council would have embarked on buying commercial property to begin with. We're not developers. Why are we using taxpayers' money to speculate on properties? So it was a mistake to buy it, and I think we overpaid for it. But
Council Long, just remind you, it was a council.
You know, Your Worship, I'm going to have my say, and that's it. I'm not going to say anything that shouldn't be said, I don't think. We did pay an awful lot of money for it, $5.4 million, and I'm wondering how we're going to service that debt. And if we demolish the building, there's certainly be no revenue coming from it at all. In my view, and I think most people will agree, that local government is here to build facilities for community use. We purchase land for community purposes, and I don't see anywhere in any strategic plan that we've gone over in the last few years, the last 20 years, that included buying a hunk of property on the corner of the main street of a town in speculation that it might develop and paying such a large amount of money for it. It wasn't part of our recent strategic planning, and I don't understand how we can change our priorities so quickly. But it's not just in this issue. It seems to be a regular pattern now with council. You know, I think that we need to release all the details on this whole purchase and anything that surrounds this property and the Aldergrove Hotel from in camera. So I intend to make that motion when it comes. There's a lot of information out there that the public doesn't know. And I want to make sure that that gets out so that we can have a clean conscience later on. You know, the funding source is a real concern for me. Putting 300,000, I don't know what the number is, 250, 300, we were supposed to get a better figure from staff, but it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's tax money, and it's putting good money after bad. We made a very expensive purchase. Now we're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to demolishing it. You know, and as was mentioned, we could use that money in so many, many other areas. You know, never mind the facilities, but there's also roads, and I think some of the funding was being proposed to come out from road closures and so forth. But there's sidewalks, there's all kinds of needs, right, that we have in the township that we could spend that money on. But this motion to demolish is $300,000 that literally going to go up in dust, and that's quite literally. And it's not going to bring any benefit to the taxpayer. In fact, the only value I suppose I see is demolishing the building will put the whole thing out of mind. And maybe try and erase the past, which I'm not sure why we'd want to do that either, considering there was a lot of good history in that hotel long before. But the other concern, and I think all of us in council need to have, is how are we supposed to service this $5.4 million in debt? I mean, that is a huge amount, I would imagine. And after the demolition, there's not going to be any hope of any revenue coming from that property. At least when it's occupied, it has a tax revenue, I think around $20,000 a year. And that could certainly go towards debt servicing. So we're going to have a lot more than the money we're proposing to spend today. It's going to be a lot more than that, exponentially more. Demolition brings no benefit whatsoever to revitalizing the downtown. You're going to have an empty lot there for a period of time, and a community garden is not what I had envisioned for that part of the town. So instead, we get a big gap right in the middle of town. So preserving and upgrading the building and repurposing it is the right thing to do. We've been talking a lot about our strategic priorities in terms of climate action and so forth. Preserving and upgrading a building is much more energy saving than building new. In fact, there's a study by the National Trust states that replacing an average building with new, even if it's more efficient in terms of energy, still takes as much as 80 years to offset the impact of new construction. And that's far longer than any lifespan of any building being currently built in today's environment. So there's that about it. And in simple terms, new construction produces 3.5 times more CO2 than renovation. That's a thought to consider. Plus, of course, demolition is going to put a lot of waste into the landfill, which is going to create GHG. So we have a huge carbon footprint that's going to be left in that empty spot where the Aldergrove Inn stands. Now we need feet on the street now. That's what Aldergrove needs. It needs revitalization. And repurposing is much faster than speculating on what development might come. In reality, I think only the market can decide when new development can happen and whether it's affordable. And quite frankly, Aldergrove is fairly saturated in the market with all the new housing that's going in the mall, Willow Creek, the new addition that's in completion now, the old arena site. There's an awful lot of activity in town, so I'm not sure how long it's going to take for that to develop. But I would say right now the market is not looking very promising. And it's just not, redevelopment is prohibitive if you do the math. We're going to be spending almost $6 million right out of the gate, 5.4, and then plus the demolition and whatever. If you just do the simple math on the report that we got a couple of weeks ago from Mr. Chu, however many units are going to be proposed there, you divide that into the land cost, I think you're going to have a very expensive housing option there, and I don't think it's going to be affordable. So anyway, I think the building needs to be sold, or at least leased, and that instead of wasting more taxpayers' money on demolition, we can recoup some of the costs and see revenue coming from it by leasing it or selling. And we've got a couple of weeks ago, we had a letter that was in the public meeting that talked about somebody that wanted to make a deal on the building, and we haven't addressed that. But keeping it and repurposing it is the right thing to do. And that's, of course, why I oppose this. And I think we should cease this practice that we have of trying to be developers. We're local government. We need to serve our citizens. Thank you.
Councillor Arneson, I believe we've spoken to this matter yet. Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I do appreciate an opportunity. I really would like to say that having read hopefully all the different submissions from the community, I agree that the public has spoken with respect to their opinion about the Alder Inn. However, and this will be my proviso with all due respect to alternative opinions, because I'm elected to have a point of view, and I'm challenged at this time, not because I feel that the building should never be demolished, but I am challenged with the timeline and the fact that the way that this has been predicated is really a direction towards a particular outcome at an accelerated pace. And from my perspective, I've always felt that if this is an asset, it's true it exists in Aldergrove, but it is a township-owned asset. So all taxpayers, we have to look at what kind of implications there would be for them. So I think this overriding obligation that I feel I've not demonstrated to myself adequately that we have reviewed with a cost-benefit analysis what kind of alternatives could be in place. I concur with Councillor Long, this absence of any revenue going forward for the foreseeable future. It may be the case that if the building is demolished, that there would be an easy turnaround, or relatively short. However, I don't know that to be true. And I would point out to our historic practice of purchasing properties for a variety of reasons, actually, similar to this. However, it's my understanding that we always have an identified outcome and business plan that more or less goes along with it. It's not necessarily spelled out A to Z, but it is something I think that we can understand, debate as a council, make a decision about. And so I'm challenged that this is coming forward through a motion, which takes, as I also objected to, takes something out of the closed realm where we deal with property and puts it into the public realm. So having said that, I'm not going to support the immediate demolition. If somebody told me there could be some opportunity to expand upon options, but I don't get the sense that that's going to happen. So I guess the chips will fall where they may, and I'm just going to vote what my conscience tells me is the right decision based on my view.
Okay, Councillor Woodward, I know you suggested making an amendment to Raya. Do you do that to Part A? Did you want to do that now?
Yeah, I've got other comments to respond to some of these 8 points, Mr. Mayor, but I'm happy to make that amendment and then address those other comments.
Sure. So that way we can move this process along.
Sure, move this along. So trying to think here where the wording would go. After the word positive, community-oriented interim uses, such as after the word community?
Sure.
Oh, sorry, interim uses such as, or how you can add the such as?
Yeah,
word?
I think taking out the word of and just adding the word such as.
Such as, yeah.
I'll second that.
Second by Councilor Whitmarsh. So I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment to A? All those opposed?
Opposed.
Councilor Long is opposed. The amendment carries. Now we have a motion A as amended.
I'd like to continue speaking
Sure.
to that.
Okay, carry on.
A second time, and then I'll wrap this up. Hopefully we can, the council stands on this. You know, I mean, I certainly respect everybody's opinion and their positions, even if I disagree, and I'll outline again some additional points here. You know, we can always find ways to delay and do nothing and equivocate, but I think now we've reached the point where it's time for leadership and some decision-making here. I think, in my opinion, this council has a regular pattern of getting things done for Aldergrove. And I think we have not heard about where the 1.7 to 2 million plus unknown amount of additional costs as outlined in the report would come from. We seem very focused on where the demolition funds will come from, which I think is a relatively small amount of money for the township. We've identified where it will come from.
Point of information, Mr. Mayor. We're not hearing Councillor, I don't know, maybe just me, but Councillor Woodward seems to be coming in and out. Okay,
I'm hearing him, but maybe it's on your end. So Councillor Woodward, I'll turn it back to you. Just maybe
Is anybody else have, sorry, Councillor Woodward, is anybody else having that challenge or just me?
It's just you.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Fine, so yeah, this will be, you know, there hasn't been a lot of discussion of where this 1.7 million, 2 million will come from. There's a lot of discussion of actually special closed items, which I won't address or respond to. This is not money up in dust. This is cleaning up the property. This is actually adding value to the property, removing the liability, which is an old building that is no longer economic. And it's time to move forward with proper revitalization in Aldergrove as per the Aldergrove core plan. So it is not money up in dust. I think too that the gap is filled by a great, economically pure, economically viable, good long-term development for the use of that property for downtown Aldergrove. And I think this council can take a lot of pride in doing what should have been done a long, long time ago and addressing this particular property with which, as it was and is, Aldergrove cannot move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Davis.
Thank you. I dropped 3 or 4 times, so I absolutely we're on A as amended, and could you just fill me in on just what they deleted here as
the amendment? Sure. The amendment is take out the word of, which comes after on the third line, comes after community-oriented interim uses. Then it would be such as community gardens. So we're just adding the words. So as examples, it's not prescriptive. It's changed.
Okay, so the examples will come after.
That's right.
That kind of, in one way, Kate, that kind of scares me. We are not on B yet. No, okay.
I was allowing discussion on anyone, but I think now we're narrowing it down to each
so on A, what I'm concerned about is
Sir Davis.
Are you okay, David? Are you okay?
Your feed has been paused.
Oh no.
So if your internet in your house is maybe not helping you out too much. I'm going to go to Councilor Richter. Maybe Councilor Davis will come back to him. Councilor Richter, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm very opposed to the position that Councillor Long has taken. And I'm opposed to it because both Councillor Long and I have sat on council for 7 terms. And every term we talk about revitalizing Aldergrove. And we've done I can't even begin to count the number of studies we've done on revitalizing Aldergrove. Now, here we are 20 years later, and we have the opportunity to actually move forward and deliver on revitalizing Aldergrove. That is the key objective here in my mind. And I think that, I mean, Councillor Long had a lot of different facts and figures about things going to the landfill. But the other side of that equation is having a shovel-ready project area where we could potentially use to get funding from higher levels of government for COVID rebuilding infrastructure programs like housing. And I just think that we need to get this done now. The community wants it done now. If we get it done now, we will be in a position to move forward in a very progressive manner, fulfill on revitalizing Aldergrove, and maybe even get some federal help in the project, in the process. So I support this amended Part A.
Thank you. Looks like we lost Councillor Davis, so I suppose you can make a note on the meeting. Unfortunately, we missed what he had to say. So I'm going to call the question on A as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Councillor Long is opposed.
And point of order, Your Worship, how are we going to deal with it? Poor Councillor Davis can't vote or speak on it.
Well,
He had something very important to say.
It's a meeting, and you have to be present to the meeting, and I can't do anything about technology. So, anybody else opposed?
Can you read back the results of the vote, Mr. Mayor?
I'm getting there. I'm just going through the process. Any others opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Long opposed.
No, sorry, Your Worship,
Oh.
I'm pressing the button madly.
Okay. Councillor
I'm
Arneson
opposed.
Okay. The Councillor Long, Councillor Arneson opposed. Councillor Davis absent. Motion carries. We move on to B. And again, there's been some discussion on this. I think it could be handled by allowing staff to proceed as determined by, other funds as determined by staff. So, Mr. Backman, how would you fix the fund environmental abatement demolition removal with other funds determined by as appropriate by staff? Would be an amendment to take out all of that, Mr. Backman.
That's correct, Your Worship. You may wish to leave some of the segments in. Some may not be objectionable. Some may be objectionable. So it would be a simple amendment to remove 1, 2, or 3 with the language that you've suggested.
What I've heard from council is that the council contingency may have some issues in grant money, but I don't want to be too restrictive to staff on how they're going to find the money, because they have some ideas. So really just saying it could be and or. So after 3, the grants program, and then it says it could be or combined as such to ensure no impact to property taxes, or up to 300 feet road, or other funds is determined by council. So we just do another or in there, and that might do it. Mr. Backman, think that would do it at the end. So we just did at the end of B, or other funds determined appropriately by staff. That gives us a bit of leeway for staff to come back with something they've heard from council.
Your Worship, Mr. Mayor, not really. If I could just help out. Councillor Davis just texted me and said he's on his way to the township hall.
David is on the phone and he'd like to speak to the motion. Is that going to be okay?
No, I believe we have a format that's been approved by council, and unfortunately, we can't be in control of other people's technology. So,
let you talk.
Oh, okay. I'm on my way to the hall. I've been starting. It's dropped 3 or 4 times, and it's useless. So I'll just go to the hall.
Well, you won't be here in time. Okay.
it's fair enough, but we have to be. Certainly, there is a procedure that's been approved by council, and as chair, I can't deviate from that. It's unfortunate.
Mr. Mayor, point of information. Point of information, Ferguson.
Yes, Ferguson.
Oh, I was wondering if you could call a short recess.
Yeah, just give me a second here, okay? I'm just going to find out. The clerk has just had to step up for a second. I want to talk to the clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. I might suggest that you continue with the discussion. Councillor Davis is en route, and you may wish to actually recess after there's some preliminary discussion just to use our time effectively.
Okay, that would be good. So we'll wait for Councilor Davis, but meanwhile, we can still move ahead with the amendments, and then the main motion submitted. Then take, if he's not here, we can take a recess. Or the main B is amended to that point. So I've got Councilor Richter and then Councilor Long, and let's discuss B.
Yes, and just a small note, Mr. Mayor, your mic is cutting out now too a little bit. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So
Yeah, no.
maybe it's just a timing thing, I don't know. So the proposed amendment, as you phrased it, is B as it stands, but add at the end, or other funds as determined appropriate by staff. Is that
Yes.
the amendment?
That
And
would
has
be
that been moved and seconded?
No, it has not.
Okay, I'll move that.
Okay, is there a seconder? Councilor Woodward seconds.
Okay,
And
so
Councilor-
it's on the table. I
It's on
see
the table,
we're
yes.
giving the latitude to staff
Right.
to figure out where the money's going to come from. As long as it doesn't go on our tax bill next year, I'm happy. Thank you.
Well, of course, it's going to come out of tax.
Councilor Long? Councilor Long, you're next.
David Davis is on his way.
Yes,
So
I know.
Are you going to take a pause here, or are you going to
Yeah.
leave him?
Councilor Long, as I had, maybe you didn't hear me because my mic might have been cutting out. I said we go through some discussion while council's here just on like this. So we have this on the table, then I'll take a short pause to give him an opportunity.
Okay, thank you. That's the only reason I had my hand up
Okay.
on behalf of David. So,
Okay, so we do have B as amended, and we could take it is 2 hours since we started. We could take a recess. Mr. Dotton?
Your worship, you can take a recess as you deem appropriate. If there's no further discussion on item B, you may wish to call the question on just the amendment, then it can be further amended if Councillor Davis arrives. My other suggestion that would be subject to a break is to table this this motion and continue with the agenda unless you think there's things that are particularly impactful to Councillor Davis.
I think we just take about a 10-minute break. It should be okay. So I'd like to, we could, now Ms. Bauer, do I need to table the motion? We just take a recess. It's in the middle of a motion. I can just declare a recess. Okay. So we'll declare a recess, maybe come back 10 after 3, and we'll see how things go then. Okay, so take a break. We'll refresh your coffee cups, and we'll be back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so that doesn't look so bad, right?
All right, we're back, and thanks for joining us, Councillor Davis. So just to bring everyone, I'll reconvene the meeting, and to bring everyone up to speed, we proceeded with A, and there was an amendment such as it was carried. Councillor Davis, I know you got cut off by technology partway through what you had to say. I'll just tell you where you are now. We're in B, and we've added an amendment that says at the end of it, or other funds as determined appropriate by staff. So it gives some flexibility there. But if you wish to go back to A and had anything to say to that, knowing that it was carried, I can always, if you wish, I can always reconsider that motion if you feel it's important to you and accommodate. So, Councillor Davis?
But okay, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, A, we just deleted.
We just added such as.
Such as,
yeah.
And we're on B now where it says funding. Say the funding again.
Yeah, so what we've done is we've added an amendment to B that says, or other funds as determined appropriate by staff. So it gives a little bit more flexibility. They don't have to go into council contingency. They can, we're giving them, because of timing, we're giving them the ability to look for other funds that would be more appropriate for this type of work.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
Does Councillor Davis wish to cast a vote on Part A?
That's what I've already asked him.
That's the question.
No, I've asked him that, and if he wishes,
or does he wish to have his vote recorded as either opposed or in favor?
He can't have it recorded unless I was to reconsider the.
Okay.
So if Councillor Davis wished to have.
Yes, I could, please. I'd like it recorded.
Okay, on A, but we have it. So what I'll do, just to keep it clean, is I will reconsider A as it was amended. So now it's back on the floor. And I'm going to call the question again on A as amended. And so I'm calling the question. All those in favor of A as amended? And those
in favor.
Opposed, I have Councillor Long and Councillor Arneson. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so It's been reconsidered, it's been voted on, it's been carried with Council Long, Council Arneson opposed. So now we're on to B. And so as amended, Council Ferguson. Council Ferguson on B as amended. We can't hear you, Council Ferguson. Even though you've unmuted, we still can't hear you. No, your mic may have switched. Maybe unplug that one. Unplug that one and then get back on the computer mic.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry about that. Maybe this thing's gone dead. Okay, so I'm kind of in a way, I might be in a similar situation to some of my colleagues here. You know, we're proceeding with the demolition as item A, which has been voted upon and passed. Now we're looking at B, and you've changed a little bit of the funding, or as other funds that's determined by staff. I still think I'm concerned about timelines, if I may, through the chair. What kind of timelines might we be indeed looking at? Or are you looking, or does, if I may, through the chair, does the motion in time starting tomorrow at demolition, if I may, through the chair, either yourself or somebody in staff?
I'll refer that to staff. Mr. Back.
Thank you, Your Worship. Assuming Section B passes, providing some reference to funding, then we'd engage in the usual process, I think, which we'd have to actually procure a company to actually start the demolition, make sure that all the necessary processes are in place. By that I mean hydro, natural gas, all of those issues. The time frame would probably be later this summer. You're leaving an adequate time frame to get it underway. It wouldn't be overnight. It would probably be a matter of a month or two, more likely 2, I would suspect, but it depends upon some cooperation from other agencies.
Just a supplemental to that other agency. I heard another councillor mention, as long as it's not in either the budgeted for this year or next year, is that correct, if I may? Would it involve budgetary funds as well?
Your Worship, I think I take the references that this must be funded from the existing budget, not to increase the budget. So it would be coming from budgeted funds, but it wouldn't be adding to this year's burden or next year's burden. It must be a reallocation to allow for the matter to proceed within the existing budget envelopes.
Okay, that clarifies a few things. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I think you're muted there, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, your mic's off.
Yeah, I have to mute it.
I thought it was me.
I know. Well, I have to mute it when Mr. Backen speaks because of the echoing in here, and then I forget to put it on. My apologies. We're all working with you. Councillor Whitmarsh, you're up.
Yes, just a clarification. If the motion is passed the way that it is I'm assuming from that staff would have the ability to move forward on the demolition without coming back to council, that they could, I guess, report to us where the money's coming from, but it's not requiring a decision of council. And am I reading it correctly that it says up to $300,000, or is that just saying $300,000 from future road disposals? Because it doesn't really give a cap here. So I'm wondering if this is a full approval, or if this is staff will still come back and outline what the cost will be and where the money's coming from for council vote.
Mr. Backen.
Your Worship, I wouldn't anticipate this returning to council, so it's important that this be viewed as being a final decision unless there's some contrary direction. We would look at it as being the necessary funds to demolish. We have some funding sources listed. There may be more, there may be some restrictions. And I think it would be, to be fair, in the range of approximately $300,000. If it's a bit more, we wouldn't be coming back. But of course, if it was something a lot more, we'd have to, because it go beyond the intent of our budget approval or direction, not our budget direction.
Okay, so this motion is giving the ability to go up to, says up to $300,000. So
to be clear, that references or up to $300,000 from future road disposals. Okay. So that would then mean there's a range there of 250 to 3, but I guess I'm advising that traditionally, if it came in at say $330,000, that's still in the ballpark to proceed. If it came in at $600,000 or something, then we'd have to come back to advise council. But the only unknown at this point is going to be level of, I guess, hazardous materials in the building itself. We built in a rather generous allowance for it, but you never know until you actually start the process.
Okay, yeah, for me, I'd like it to be such that staff does not need to return to council, that we're clear today, that the decision we make today allows staff to move forward, assuming that it's within this ballpark range.
Based on the information that staff have, and as Mr. Backen said, putting in some extra for contingency, they should be okay. If it was something out of the ordinary, yeah, we'd have to come back to council. But I think staff have enough direction with this. Some the comments of Mr. Backen. Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to add a couple of questions through the staff as well. Mr. Backen, if that's all right, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Backen, have we completed any of the hazardous material assessments?
On a preliminary basis, pardon me, on a preliminary basis, yes. That's visible to the eye and making some assumptions as to what may be behind the plaster. Sometimes when you pull the materials out, you find more material. So I would say it's an educated estimate, but there can always be surprises.
Mr. Mayor, I also want to echo Councillor Whitmarsh's concerns. My concern, of course, is we have a summer break coming up and wouldn't want a relatively small amount of additional funding to technically hold up the demolition, which has been confirmed and approved by council to proceed as quickly as possible. So I would be comfortable with adding some allowance to deal with some of those unanticipated potential additional costs, which would hopefully we would proceed with anyway, to ensure that we don't have to wait potentially until we reconvene in September. So I'll leave it up to you. I would prefer, rather than staff direction, we maybe give them some additional authorization to proceed and echo Councillor Whitmarsh's concern that this doesn't return and that this gets done.
So as I read this motion, it's not prescriptive on the amount. It only says up to 300,000 for future road disposals. They may not even use any road disposals. So, but we're just saying up to 300 from that. So there are other sources of revenue or funding that staff can look at. So I don't believe that this motion is restricting them. Again, I think if it was without having further information, it's difficult for us to say, but it sounds like staff feel that $300,000 or thereabout is sufficient. We have given them other funds as determined appropriate by staff. So that gives them a pretty open book, but I respect that staff will come back to us if it is substantially different than what we're thinking of. But the way the motion reads, it gives some suggestions. It says 300, no more than 300 for road disposals, but it allows staff to carry on. And I'm getting a nod from Mr. Backen. So this motion should give enough leeway to staff to carry on, unless it's something extraordinary that really we'd want to know about anyway. I think we're fine with the way it reads, according to staff. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I mean, I'm not going to belabor it. I think we made our intent clear. Hopefully that if there is some leeway, that staff would have some provision to proceed. You know, if it comes back at 301,000, I don't want it coming back to council. I believe Councillor Whitmarsh was sort of moving in that direction. And if there's some necessary amendment to make that 100% authorized, I'd like to do that. Thanks.
It's pretty clear that they can go to 301 to 320, but if it goes substantially higher, they come back to us anyway. Councillor Richter on B.
Yeah, I'm just listening to the, I think it's captured too with the or other funds as determined appropriate by staff. But if we changed it to and or other funds is determined appropriate by staff, I think that will clarify any potential misunderstanding. So I'd make that as a friendly amendment if we can make it a friendly amendment. If not,
yeah, if there's no objection to that from council, then we'll add that word.
And or.
Yeah.
Subject.
Okay, so then if you could move that addition of the word, Councillor.
Make it $500,000.
Okay, excuse me.
Okay.
Councillor, if you want to move that.
Yeah, I'll move
amendment.
that amendment. The word and in front of or.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Woodward. I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? Opposed?
Opposed.
Councillor Long is opposed. That amendment carries. Back to the main motion is amended. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed?
Opposed.
Councillor Arneson and Councillor Long opposed. That carries. We'll go to D. I don't see any questions. I think it's very straightforward. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed?
Mr. Mayor, I do have a question.
Oh, let's just sign hand go up now. Okay, Councillor Richter on D.
Yeah. I'm very concerned about honoring a particular part of the history of that building, like the last 35 years of it. So I would like to propose an amendment that any commemoration to prepare to commemorate and honor the very early history of the Alder Inn. So I want very as in from the time it was built to, which was what, 1948 to say 1965, period.
You can make that amendment. Someone wants to
Yeah,
second that.
I'll make that amendment.
Seconded by Councillor Woodward. I don't want to, I think it states here early history. I think I hate rewriting history. History is history. History is based on facts. I can't support it. I think if there's something that's worth commemorating after 1965, we shouldn't restrict it. I think there's staff would be aware of any sensitivities around some things. And Councillor Richter, do you wish to speak more to it? You see your hand still up. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yeah, I certainly understand the sentiment, but I'm not supportive of restricting it by a specific year. I think it's quite clear the kinds of the history that we like to honor and those kinds of histories that we don't. So I'd like to leave it as is.
I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? And opposed? Mayor Phillips, Councillor Davis, Councillor
Opposed.
Councillor Ferguson,
Opposed.
Councillor Kuntz, Councillor Arneson, opposed. Motion fails. The amendment fails. So we're back to the main motion. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed?
I'm
Favor.
opposed.
Councillor Richter is opposed. Who else opposed? Okay, D carries. All right, we move on to other business. And Councillor Arneson, you have a notice of motion. And I will turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Well, this is a great segue to our last conversation. So I'm not going to read the motion. However, I am going to move the motion and then give a brief background and description of what the strategy would be if endorsed by council.
So is there a seconder to that motion? Councillor Davis seconds it. Councillor Arneson, speak to it.
Yes, thank you, Worship. So just to remind council, the council priorities agenda under operational strategies, planning and development has identified the revitalization of Aldergrove as an issue of high importance and priority. As council is aware, and as we just been speaking about, there are significant recent developments in terms of this agenda item, including the draft proposal for the Aldergrove Mall site redevelopment, as well as the purchase of the Alder Inn, and that obviously is now moving forward to a new phase. So the intention of this motion is to seek council approval to refer the matter to staff in order to create a subsequent presentation and report prior to the 2021 budget considerations regarding an updated analysis of the potential to utilize a revitalization tax exemption program for the redevelopment of properties in the downtown Aldergrove core. So if adopted, the strategy would act to further trigger economic acceleration and advancement within the immediate, but as well as the surrounding area of Aldergrove. That's the intention. And by way of background, and as we might recognize, in 2010, the Aldergrove Core Community Plan was put in place, and subsequently, substantive work was undertaken in and around 2014 to explore opportunities to create incentives to maximize investment in the area. So I won't go into what types there are. There's obviously a number, but local governments have in their toolbox opportunities to provide programs and area plans that promote incentivization for redevelopment. So this motion particularly supports the review of an Aldergrove-centric plan as a regulatory tool designed to make recommendations regarding appropriate actions to address a medium to longer term redevelopment model. So this aligns with the principles of the Aldergrove Core Area Plan, builds on the foundation that we already have, and seeks to find the relevant current information so that we can create an optimum balance in this area to support redevelopment. So my hope, if it's supported by council, is that consultants who specialize in this type of analysis would come back to council with a draft policy to be reviewed after presentation to council for consideration. And at that point, if it was endorsed by council, then it would have to be formalized as a bylaw at some future date. So that's the proposition, and I'm eager to hear what other councillors think about this.
Councillor Richter.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question and a couple of comments about this. My first question is this motion out of order on the basis of other meetings? Because it seems to me it's redundant of work that's already been done or is being done.
I wouldn't say it's out of order, but I will ask Mr. Back and or Mr. Seppi if they can provide some background on some of the work that's been done and where we are today and what the impact of this would be.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think Mr. Seppi is familiar with the work done around 2010, 10 years ago. Mr. Seppi, are you out there?
I'm down here. Yes, Your Worship, thank you for the opportunity. There has been work done in the past, but there has been significant, I guess, time as well as initiatives that have occurred since then, which makes the market condition, the economic development condition, not necessarily the same. So I wouldn't necessarily conclude that there is any I guess, concerns. In fact, it may be appropriate to proceed with another assessment without going into specifics. As I recall, I have not looked at it, but the previous analysis considered various options that would be available. And as I said earlier, because of the lapse of time as well as significant effort that has gone in by council over the past few years, those conditions are no longer the same. And as such, I guess as a starting point, council may wish to refresh its own memory in terms of what that report stated, and then proceed with the next steps.
Thank you. Councillor.
Okay. No, I'm not done yet, Mr. Mayor.
No, I haven't. I've just asked you to help address your concerns.
Sorry. I guess the concern that I have is this was a special closed item and it's now out and open, and I don't recall us ever releasing this matter from special closed, if you want to be specific. And that's the specific question I'm asking here.
I believe that Aldergrove Downtown Core Plan is not a closed report.
No, but revitalization tax credits are.
What do you call it? This, I need to refer to the clerk back and there's because you've raised a point of order. So,
my interpretation when I, in reviewing it, I believe the previous item in closed had completed, and this was an item to review it. It's been a significant amount of time since it was last dealt with, and I did not see a relation between taking another look at it or taking a new look at it now and the previous actions.
Okay, so if something's enclosed and it expires, it's no longer enclosed. Am I interpreting that correctly?
I don't believe we've actually discussed the substance of what was discussed in closed. All that's been brought forward is just a new idea to look at this. The motion itself, I don't think included anything to do with what was done in closed.
Okay, well, I have a question around cost and time. How much is this going to cost? How long is it going to take? And Mr. Mayor, I would like to request division because I believe that the last paragraph is substantively different from the first paragraph. It's not, the first paragraph focuses on reviewing. The last paragraph basically says, go ahead and implement it. And I don't agree with that paragraph until we have had a review. So I would request division.
Just give me a second here. I'm just taking a look at this. So that the part that you want divided from it is the words followed by review of the findings that are to be brought back to council for further potential implementation. So it doesn't, I don't believe that really ties us down, but we can certainly divide.
Yeah, the motion
Yeah.
lacks clarity in that respect, but it implies that we're going to implement whatever comes out of this review. And I think that that's the wrong implication.
If you want to move division.
Yes, I do want to
And
move
second,
division.
is there a seconder on division? Councillor Woodward seconds division, so I'm going to call the question on division. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, division carries. So we'll deal with, so Councillor Richter, you wish to carry on?
Yes,
Any other
so,
questions?
yeah, well, I did have a question with regards to cost and time. And bearing in mind that our staff are dealing right now with a number of different priorities as a result of COVID and other regular operating matters, I'm just wondering what kind of a time frame we're looking at for this and what kind of costs will be incurred to carry it out.
Just I'll refer back to Mr. Backen. I have a concern that this is would be a priority, or we put it on our priority list, and that maybe we should refer this back to our priority session, so that as we know that one thing goes on, another has to come off. So that may be a way to deal with this, to refer it back to our priority session and have a further discussion on it. Mr. Backen, do you have any comments?
Your Worship, I think Mr. Seffi has some information in terms of time and cost. Mr. Seffi?
Thank you, Your Worship. The current estimate in terms of completing the analysis, not to have the subsequent consultation, but rather just the academic analysis is about 3 to 4 months. And then the cost about $25,000 to $30,000, assuming availability of a qualified consultant. So just to repeat, about 3 to 4 months and about $25,000 to $30,000 at this point.
Well, thank you, Mr. Seffi. If that's the case, then, Mr. Mayor, I would support your motion, or I would make your motion with regards to referring this to council priorities to deal with. Mr. Mayor, your mic's off.
Yeah. Again, Councillor, what I'll do is we'll go through the two speakers and then we'll go back to
Okay,
thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, basically, this is an awful lot like the type of thing we'd like to see, whether it's Council Policy Committee or Council Priorities Committee, whatever the new name is. I think I agree with you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the councillor bringing this forward because it gives us an opportunity to look at where we've been and where we're going in the future. We don't want another task force, Mr. Mayor, because it sounds like, from listening to Mr. Safey, it sounds like almost like a task force, complete with consultant money, time spent, and other things. So we can review that at a council priorities or council policy committee, and I think that I support some Councillor Richter, whoever wants to bring it forward, or myself, whatever. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to highlight for council's attention the title of the motion. Revitalization tax exemptions, commercial buildings. So the title confused me somewhat because that's not in the motion itself. Review a design of a revitalization area. I don't know what that means. Review a design of a revitalization area. And it doesn't specifically mention what incentives we're talking about, but in the title of the motion, it's specifically property tax exemptions. So, you know, while I support definitely looking at any different ideas, I've actually read the report that's been discussed, the special closed report, read that about 6 months ago. I think it would be helpful to have that distributed to council before we authorize staff repeating consultation and doing a bunch of additional work. I think we could receive that at the next meeting and then perhaps reconsider this. My thoughts around this are that we haven't given a property tax exemption to the Aldergrove Town Centre project. It wasn't requested, nor did we consider that. And now we're going to consider that for other people in the area. I don't know of anyone telling me that they can't develop buildings in Aldergrove because of property taxes. they can't develop in Aldergrove and some of the smaller lots, either for their opinion, it's not profitable enough, or the parking requirements prevent it. So I think we've got other things we could be working on, such as those issues. And moving forward with the Alder Insight, which we're glad to see some progress on that today, rather than jumping to giving property tax incentives. I don't see how we're making that leap, that's somehow going to solve the problem. So I didn't want to have staff necessarily consulting with these community organizations. I don't know if these community organizations own any buildings in the downtown of Fort Langley that they're not building because of property tax exemptions. So we should be talking to property owners and developers, not to the Aldergrove, not necessarily to the Aldergrove Community Association about a property tax exemption program, which I know of no one that's even asked for. And we haven't given it to the developer we just approved a project for quite recently. So I think we should kick this down the road a couple of years and see what the progress is on the Aldergrove Town Center project, see where we end up with the Alder Insight, and not have staff running around recreating work with consultants, 3 to 4 months, 50 grand or 30 grand, or whatever it's going to cost for a report that can simply be redistributed to council. So I think this is one of the ones where we talked about in the workshop, not every motion, not every idea brought forward should be sent to staff to work on. And I don't see this one I see this as duplication of work that no one's asked for. When you can just go back and read that report. And I don't see it as fair. I'll repeat it again. I don't see it as fair to be contemplating this now when we didn't contemplate it. It wasn't requested, and we didn't grant it to the Aldergrove Town Center project. So I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Well, the feedback is useful. I do take some of those points to be reasonable because I think that from this perspective, but there's a certain amount of reading in that necessarily, if we looked into this, that we would be doing something about this. And so, no, I haven't been approached by somebody or a business entity who said we would desperately want a tax revitalization. However, it is a tool that's available, excuse me, to us. And I would say that I would support actually having this come back in one of our council procedure policy meetings, because I think it will help to create a more cohesive sense about what that could look like. And in the event that council determines in its wisdom that they do not wish to embark on such a program, if they feel it's redundant, if it's premature, if it's something that it would not be useful, that would be a good time to rather sort that out. So I would be amenable to the amendment. I don't think necessarily, though, that we should presume that under the current conditions that this would not be helpful, because it does specifically refer to the medium term. So from my point of view, we're just starting really on, down this road. And so anything that we generate, I think, would be to the positive based on the investment that we've already made in trying to understand the nature of what could be done. And it may be the case it isn't the optimum thing to do, at which point I'd be happy to concede that having looked at it, we could move on. I personally don't think it would be unfair to anybody else, because I think we have policies all the time that if in January we adopted something, I wouldn't think it was unfair that we didn't offer it to somebody in December, just because it crystallizes at the point when you come up with something. And I probably wouldn't have said no. If we'd had a policy in place, maybe we should have considered looking at this earlier in our process. But I do think that it makes a lot of sense that the market forces that we've now energized seem to be creating a different scenario than was originally anticipated. And so I just think it would be good if we heard more about it. But as always, the will of council will prevail.
Thank you. Mr. Backen, we have the strategic planning sessions where we do pick our priorities. So we have another one scheduled. Perhaps that'd be appropriate to refer this to decide on it.
Yeah, that's correct, Your Worship. We don't have one scheduled at the moment, but as part of our regular cycle, we normally try to do so. And the complication here is, of course, is due to pending retirements, making sure we have the right staff in place.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Ricker.
Yes, well, based on that, I would make a motion that we refer both parts of this motion to the to an upcoming council priorities session.
The one where we get Macintosh. Yeah.
Yes, the one with Gordon Macintosh.
Okay. Is there a seconder? Councillor Whitmarsh seconds. Discussion on the referral. Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Councillor Woodward opposed. Motion carries. Okay, Councillor Arneson, P2. Councillor Arneson.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So I also won't read this motion. However, I would like to just move the motion and then give some background information.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Davis seconds. Councillor Arneson, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. As Council will recall, recently there was quite a discussion regarding an application in Willoughby, and it more or less at that point centered around a one-story commercial proposal with surface parking. So in considering that as a policy challenge, so it once again is something that I think we need to look at. From my perspective, I drafted this because I believe that there's a misalignment between some of our dated neighborhood plans in Willoughby and some of the new policy initiatives that we have been advancing. Of course, over the course of time, some of them are less dated than others, but I think that that was an example of one that was rejected 8-1 by council and sent back for some review and reworking by the proponent to work with staff. So most specifically, this motion refers to two things, which I think are conjoined. One is mixed use and the other one is parking standards. And I would just like to point out that a lot of communities are reviewing their parking standards and are making the case that land economics and mixed use go hand in hand with more parking options, shall we say, so the reduction of absolute standards of numbers of parking spots. So it contributes, once we look at that, and if that was to be endorsed after a review, that I think it would create more value in the properties that we continue to develop in Willoughby. I think that it would make a more walkable community. I certainly think that it would be a best case scenario for mixed use to increase taxation for those areas, concentration of populations living in areas in and around the commercial zones on top of other buildings generally is a more workable model. So I just brought this forward for council's consideration. As per the questions around the last initiative, I certainly would support this also going to a council priority meeting to discuss this. It would be a substantial change to what we are currently doing, but I personally think that it's needed. And I do understand that it would be done by a consultant, and the likelihood is finding the right consultant would probably take the duration of maybe 4 to 5 months, if I'm not misquoting Mr. Safey. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Ferguson, you're not coming through again. Probably the same issue. Plug the headset. There you go.
Oh, am I now? You hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so, okay, if I may, I wanted to know if this could be something less prescriptive or less challenging. And I'll ask, if I may, through the chair to professional planners, would it not be just something, a straight addition to the plan for an option or opportunity for a proponent, developer, land use individual, consultant, or whatever to consider adding things like mixed use and parking to our bylaw, if I may, through the chair.
Mr. Sefi?
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate the clarification that was provided by the mover, Your Worship, because at first glance, the title, Willoughby Neighborhood Plan Review, I guess, suggests exactly that, but then the motion discusses an amendment or a potential review of the zoning bylaw. So I think, well, anything is possible subject to council direction, but again, more clarity, I think, ideally would be provided, because there are several things that are running in my mind as to what may be required, what may be needed. Again, reference was made to recent discussions in light of specific applications that were deemed to be not necessarily the best and highest use based on current standards and current, I guess, planning rationalizations, et cetera, et cetera. And those were in relation with potentially turning simply commercial developments into mixed-use developments. That certainly is something that staff is aware of, because some of our neighborhood plans, and again, I have to, I guess, preface my discussions, Your Worship, my comments, in that all of the neighborhood plans in Willoughby have now been completed. So would council wish staff to review areas where the neighborhood plans may be older than the others, and take a look at areas where neighborhood commercial may have been designated, anticipated, with a view to changing those neighborhood commercial areas, designations, into something that is more akin to today's needs in terms of a mixed-use development. That is one thing, one path staff could follow. The other one that I just heard was about, I guess, review of our parking requirements. And certainly they have implications as to what may be possible in terms of a mixed-use development, but that requires a different direction and a different path by staff to follow, because the parking requirements have nothing to do with our neighborhood plans, but rather it's enshrined in our zoning bylaw. So with that said, Your Worship, I guess it depends on the actual cost and timing, depends on what council has in mind. If we were to do a broad-based overall review of the Willoughby County Plan, that would certainly be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars and take at least over a year to complete, whereas a review of specific areas identified that may be, I guess, better designated to higher and a better use would be significantly lower cost, I would say in the $40,000 to $50,000 range, and significantly less time to complete. And a review of the parking bylaw, the parking requirements of our zoning bylaw, that again is a separate process. So it really depends on what council has in mind.
So Mr. Mayor, just want to finish up on the fact that that was a lengthy answer, Mr. Safety, but it was somewhat, if I may, it was somewhat what I was expecting, because when I read it through, the last thing I want to do is review like all of Yorkshire and when it's already been built. So the thing is, I think we need to really decide from, if staff can, if it does go to a council policy and priorities committee, council could get some direction from staff under options for how much we want to go through, what would we consider mixed use parking, and just what would work best for us in an efficient and effective manner, because I can see this being something simpler than more complicated. So that's where I'm coming from, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Yeah, you might
unmute it again. Yeah, Councilor Davis.
Yes, thank you. When I read the notice of motion, I also it triggered me to the last plan we had on 80th and 203rd or whatever it was, and I thought that maybe it would be time to look at it, because one, the plan is old, Willoughby plan is old, but and how long would it take and how much money it would cost. But if we did a Pacific area, that would certainly cut the cost and the time down. However, council does have the ability to, at each plan that comes forward, but if we did have, if we did look at it in Pacific areas that this problem would have come up at, it would be better for the developer and it'd be better for council. We could say, you know, they did exactly the way they're supposed to, and this is what we're going to get. And you know, I would support this going through to have it looked at, not such a broad plan, but in Pacific areas where this problem could come up again. Thank you.
Good, Councilor Richter.
Yes, thank you. I'm tending to agree with what Councillor Ferguson was saying in that this is really kind of a policy shift, and it's going to require staff resources. And Mr. Safey has just told us that some of those resources could, you know, depending on the scope of this project, could be as long as a year. So based on that, I think it should be going to council priorities. I think council needs to refine what it is exactly that we're looking for here before we get staff to charge ahead and work on something that the parameters aren't that clear. So when you're ready for a motion, Mr. Mayor, if Councillor Ferguson wants to refer to CPC, I would second that motion.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, thanks. I want to also highlight some of those, echo some of those comments. I won't repeat them all. Yeah, I think I would have preferred to see a motion that would have been a little more restrictive and defined on exactly what we might do. So, for example, you know, I don't know where this idea of 4 to 5 months comes from. I can't even get a driveway widening update in less than a year. So I don't know how we're going to do something on this scope within 4 to 5 months, as the mover mentioned. I don't know why we can't just do a motion that says, how about a review and update all designations within Willoughby neighborhood plans to not allow any more strip malls? Pretty simple, as opposed to this review, which is next steps, design, funding, broad-based review of zoning standards. Like, why not just say no more strip malls? Review all designations that allow strip malls and let's change them. That would be a notice of motion that I think would move towards a policy objective that this council is debating, and then we can end this issue. If you can't get 5 votes to update designations to not allow strip malls, then the council supports strip malls. And we don't have to go and have staff running around with consultants for 2 years reviewing community plans. That's a very specific prescriptive policy change. That, to me, that's what the notice of motion that should be saying. If that's where it's going, presumably that's where it's going based on what the mover mentioned. So I don't support sending this to have it discuss it again and again and again. I would support a different revised notice of motion that was more specific on what it was trying to achieve, rather than an open-ended review of neighborhood plans, which are of varying ages and currency. Something very specific that council can debate and determine rather than an open-ended review. So I don't support it in this form, but would support some version that maybe is more specific. Either I can bring it forward in a couple of weeks or the mover can bring it back. But to send this to some committee now where we're going to discuss it, by the time we get around to discussing it and going forward with or not, we'll probably approve 2 more strip malls. So, I mean, I would prefer that we pick a process that can be done faster than was outlined by staff. Thank you.
Councilor Whitmarsh.
Yeah, much of what I would have said has been spoken by many of the other councillors. I think it needs to be more specific. It's very general. I'm certainly not supportive of an overall neighborhood plan review. I think we need to narrow it down, and I think probably having a good conversation as a council would be advantageous. Some ideas that people have are not the same as ideas that other people have, and so we could do it by all bringing our own motions and see if they get passed, or we could actually sit around, have a good discussion and formulate what we think is the right way to go. So I'd probably support it going to council priorities at some point.
Thank you. Okay, hearing all the discussion, I see Councilor Arneson wants to speak for the second time, so let's get my bid in right now. I have a hard time supporting this. This is a major review. This isn't simple. If we're going to start reviewing neighborhood plans, then we need to start going through the maybe prioritizing throughout the township, the oldest ones and working our way through to the newest ones. But I always believe that if you build something, you build a house, and you move in and you realize you made a couple of errors or things have changed, technology's changed, you wish you would have done it different. And somebody gave you a gajillion dollars, tear it down, start over again, build a new one, you'd still find a few issues that you'd want to change. So there's never perfect, there's always improvement. And there's a couple philosophies here. One is make our plans so prescriptive that there is no way for any flexibility for developers and for council to, as we evolve and as things change and new ideas come forward, or build in so much flexibility that now nobody knows what they're doing. So, we have a pretty good balance right now, and certainly there are going to be proposals that come forward that are asking for the amendments, but to redo the entire plan, to start digging into it, and then coming up with what we think will be the perfect one. And by the time it's done, it's already obsolete. So working with what we have, I'm not a big fan of tearing into this one. Some say it's old. I think in the world of plans, Willoughby, we've just finished a couple of the last neighborhood plans, and it's still evolving. So I don't even know if I'd support you sending this back for more discussion. I think it takes time, and it might be a future council to say, okay, let's review the Willoughby plan. Let's review all of that. That's a big project, and as we've learned from Brookswood and other areas. So I'll ask now, Councilor Arneson has his hand up. So go ahead, Councilor Arneson. You might be muted, Councilor Arneson.
Yeah. I've actually given quite a bit of thought about writing motions. And to me, part of the upside in writing motions that are a little more on the vague side is that it allows council as a group to discuss all of these different parameters. So if I write something that's asking for a very specific thing, it may be the case that I may have missed a nuance that one of my councillor colleagues would like to point out, or staff would put forward at the same time. So this could be, from my perspective, an initial step in a direction, but it really was very much triggered by the fact that apparently, if there is a political sensibility that we do not wish, as Councillor Woodward has referenced, any strip malls, that we have a problem if our current plan calls for them. I don't doubt we have all the discretion in the world to say, send it back, but I don't think that that is a really viable way to go about the development of our community. And so if we want to define it more, or if we want to leave it as it is, but this was a method to consider, and I do appreciate the feedback, a review. It doesn't have to be that broad-based. I'm not an expert, that's why we have staff, but it looks at some of the components that I feel need to be somehow reviewed with a different lens to look at mixed use, and especially parking as an emerging issue. I don't think that and I see them as being congruent. They're entirely related to each other. They may be different departments that deal with that, but I think that they should be considered together. So if somebody's going to bring a motion to consider it at council priority, I'd be happy to support that, because I do think that we need further discussion about it. And it may not be an expansive discussion. It could be a very focused discussion, but I do think we need to have one.
Councilor Ferguson?
That motion to put it forward the council policy and priorities committee for discussion. I don't expect staff to have a big, huge report or something, but this is the beginning of discussion, and we can look at plans as we exist today rather than to beginning. I'm so moving this motion be sent to the council priorities and policy committee.
I'll second.
second by Councilor Richter. So discussion on that. Councilor Woodward on the referral.
Yeah, no, I don't support. At some point, we got to just stop doing this. Just sending stuff to CPC. We'll never actually discuss stuff that might go somewhere. I think this could be so simplified to just say that we all know where this came from. This came from an application to build a strip mall in the heart of Willoughby, which is anything but walkable, which some people are voting for, even though they talk about walkability and put forward motions. So I think we should just make a decision as a council. We're either going to allow strip malls in Willoughby or we aren't. There's no need to go down and discuss it at CPC forever and then have a review. And then again, 2 years from now, we'll already have approved multiple strip malls. This is a process that's not going to solve the problem. And the problem is just going to continue. And we have the same chicken and egg, right? People come forward and say, well, I complied with the neighborhood plan, therefore I deserve my strip mall. And then we never change the neighborhood plan because we keep talking about how we have full discretion, which we never use. So I would like to see us make a very definitive statement about strip malls and simply not allow them anymore as elected officials that can answer for those decisions at the next election. So I support making a decision around strip malls. I don't support a process that will just go on forever and not achieve anything.
All right, this is on the referral. So I'm going to call the question on the referral. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed?
Opposed.
Mayor Froze, Councilor Woodward, Councilor Whitmarsh. Okay, so the referral carries. All right, Councilor Kuntz, you've got a motion. 2-3.
Yes, thank you. So this was in reference to the item, the memo was dated June 9, and I think, I don't know if everyone got a chance to really look at it because we had a lot on that agenda that day. But first I want to thank the staff and the members of this working group that represent about 10 sectors in our township for the work that they've done to kind of put forward some of the recommendations. The purpose of this group was to discuss the impact of COVID and the various sectors and the local economy.
Maybe Councilor Kuntz, I hate to interrupt.
Yeah.
Can you move it first? We get a seconder and then we can have.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Moved and second by Councilor Whitmarsh. Okay, now carry on. So we get it on the table. Thank you.
So yeah, so the purpose was to really, what was the impact of COVID on these various sectors, and what could they do as a group together, and how could council support some of the recommendations? So they had some action items that that they were hoping to bring forward, and that that council might want to consider to help our local businesses and grow our economy despite this COVID pandemic. So yeah, that was all I wanted to just make sure that this got brought forward.
Thank you. Councilor Whitmarsh.
This is a great initiative here, and I really want to thank Councillor Kuntz for bringing it forward. It is something that was missed or slipped by us, exactly as she had said, that we discussed. It was part of a package that came to council. It was a very long agenda, and we kind of went over it. But I do know that the people that were part of that group worked extremely hard to work to see how we could move forward and make some good economic recovery, particularly during some difficult times. So I'm very supportive of this. I think it's a good initiative. They came up with some very good ideas, and the people worked very hard, and I'm pleased to support this.
Councilor Richter.
Yes, I just had a question. Does staff have any idea what the cost or the time for doing something like this would be? And in conjunction with that, would a study like this fit in with our COVID recovery plans that I know staff are working on right now?
Thank you, Your Worship. It's probably best to comment on each one just very, very briefly. The letters, of course, are not that significant at all in terms of the time frame or the cost. The report back to reprioritize transportation-related capital construction projects. Mr. Sefi, do you have a comment in terms of time to have a look at that and report back?
Yeah, that would not take that long because of the funding limitations that we have. Our priorities are really just a couple of projects. So certainly we can bring those forward. And as council is aware, we have recently been discussing the possibility of finding other sources of funding to address other road needs in Willoughby. But that aside, the other historic, or when I say historic, I mean over the past 10 years, our priorities have been essentially Fraser Highway in terms of how we are concentrating our efforts. So certainly we can take a look at that within a couple of months.
Thank you, Mr. Sefi. And then we come to the next topic, which was the buy local program opportunities. We have a bit of a group that's already working on that through economic development, so I don't think that would be significant. The grant program itself, Mr. Tulamello, are you out there? He may not be live at the moment, so I'll just venture that I think he could do that as part of his existing work program. It would take a bit of time, but I don't think it'd be inordinate. And then the timelines and resource requirements on the agricultural viability strategy. I think maybe a member of the committee might be able to give us a bit more help, but I suspect that the committee could have a look at that, and then staff could work on that within the confines of these existing committee structures. So again, I don't think these are going to take that much time or cost that much money. There's a fairly lengthy list, but I think it could be accommodated through the existing work programs.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson?
Can you hear me again?
Yes.
Okay, no, I think these are 5 bullet points. It's mine. Maybe it's a kind of a wordsmithing thing. Is that on the therefore be it resolved that council, they're asking staff to address. I'm not sure if they can address. You've already addressed it right now. Whether you want to do something, I would say would therefore be resolved that council direct staff regarding the following 5 points, and those issues are directed into 5 points rather than asking staff to address. I'm not sure what asking staff to address. We've asked them now, and if it passes, then they can direct it accordingly. But I was just wondering if the wording on that, if I may through the chair to the staff, if that's appropriate direction.
I just quickly checked with clerk, and she says that it would be the same effect either way. If we're asking staff, it's like directing staff. So certainly staff aren't going to debate council's request. They're going to generally, when council makes a motion, they'll carry it out. So the wording here. As long as
the clerk understands the direction,
yeah.
That's all.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, that was my only point.
Thank you, Council Woodward.
Yeah, thanks. I want to echo too the comments of Councillor Whitmarsh. I wish I'd thought of this. This is I really appreciate this coming forward. It's an easy one to vote for. I won't belabor it too much, but I obviously support it and want staff to get to work on it. And if these are easy items, then they'll be done quickly. And if they require some additional work, it's something we should be doing. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with the first 4. The last one I have a bit of hesitation about. And right now, I know we're in a crossroads with COVID recovery and food security, and there is a bigger push towards having abattoirs. And I'm very concerned that if we move to open up abattoirs, we're going to end up with quite a politically sensitive matter on our hands. We've been down this road before. So I'd like some clarification around number 5 and what staff would propose to report back on. And would it be to actually open up the township for abattoirs on all farms? Is that the intent?
I'll have to ask Ms. I have to ask the mover. I don't think it would be. Food processing certainly would include abattoirs, but I believe our zoning bylaws are probably in place, and that would all have to come to council. Food processing generally is processing food post it going to the abattoir, but Mr. Bakken perhaps you can help.
Your Worship, I think there's 2 parts. There's the intent of the mover, then there's the interpretation. As to the interpretation, it seems to be to simply look at increasing overall food processing capacity. I take it that would be in the context of our existing regulatory structure. At this point, it is quite true that our structure is fairly restrictive in some of the intensive agricultural operations. So I wouldn't see that changing. although keep in mind that there is some issues we still have with the Ministry of Agriculture in terms of the, I guess, merit of those bylaws, given their interpretation of the necessary latitude required to operate a farm, particularly in the Farm Practices Act. But as to the intent, I think we'd have to defer to the mover of if that intent included abattoirs.
Yeah, well, I just want to make sure that we're not going to get into any kind of a fist fight or whatever with the Ministry of Agriculture over this, because we've been towing the line very carefully with them for quite a while now, and I don't think we should be stepping over it.
So, oh, sorry. Can you hear me? Oh, Mayor's speaking. You're muted, Mayor.
Call the back and mute. Okay, Councilor Kuntz, do you wish to respond or just call it?
Yeah, just on that last point, and I totally, I actually thought about the abattoir and that whole situation. But it does say reevaluate and report back, so maybe we could get that clarified for the last point. So I don't know that we're, asking for it, but we can maybe get some more clarity on that.
Well, I think the motion stands okay as it is. Certainly, if we're going to start changing our zoning and intensive agriculture, this doesn't really go towards that. It talks about overall food processing, so that's existing. So I'm going to call the question. Not necessarily going to call the question on this. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. All right. P4 is an item for receipt. Has been put on the agenda. Requested Councilor Richter. Motion to receive, please. You have a motion to receive? Councilor Davis, seconder. Second, Councilor Woodward. Mr. Backen.
Your Worship, I wanted to point out that there was a couple topics covered by today's distribution list. The first topic, the 216th Street corridor, is on today's distribution list under item number 15. And as well, I'm making a bit presumptuous, but the delegation of today from the Haters is on today's distribution list as item number 1. So we have some material to cover those topics, and council may wish to discuss in that context.
Okay, thank you. So we'll start with this one, and I was going to discuss the delegation and the memo that staff have. We'll deal with the 216th Street corridor correspondence first, and then we'll move on to the other one. Councilor Richter.
Yes, in the letter that was sent to us by Mrs. Nash, there are a number of questions in that letter, including, well, basically because the interchange is going to now open on August 31st. The letter would like to know what our plans are to ensure safety, like, for example, bylaw officers ticketing offending trucks, plans to ensure children are safe, speed abatement, crossing guards. Well, that's an old argument to crossing guards, and I don't think we should go there. Stopping traffic, shortcutting through Forest Hills, and will there be humps by the park on 86 and crosswalks? So I had asked to have this put back on the agenda, or to be placed on the agenda, so that we can get answers from staff to all of Mrs. Nash's questions and sent out to the public or published before August 31st, because the community has been very clear and very specific around the importance of safety, particularly for children going forward. So that was my intent, and that's basically my questions. Have these questions been answered for the public, and is the public able to access those answers?
Thank you. Mr. Seffi, perhaps you could respond and maybe advise if you require a motion for this.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Respond to it. Questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Backen referenced a memorandum that was distributed on today's package, Your Worship. I believe it's item number 15, that addresses all of the issues and questions that have been raised by the area residents. In particular, the ones that Councilor Richter just referenced with regard to, I guess, traffic violations and crossing guards. They are outside of our jurisdiction, so there is not much that can be done other than having discussions with the RCMP and with the school board and the school district and the school themselves, I guess, in case of the independent or the French school, to make sure that there's appropriate measures in place in terms of crossing guards, if in fact those are needed. As far as the other areas of concern are concerned, in terms of where the Township of Langley can play a role, those have been outlined in the memorandum to a great, I guess, amount of detail in terms of what we have done in the past and what we plan to do going forward, Your Worship. We do appreciate and recognize that the response from the ministry has been that the interchange is going to be opened at the end of August of this year. And there will be, I guess, some of the measures that will have to go into place after the opening, including an installation by the ministry of some advisory signage along the highway, because those were specifically to do with this project. They're not the typical signs that are installed elsewhere. And as such, the ministry had to actually fabricate them specifically for this project. And that process is ongoing, and they will be installed as soon as possible. That said, Your Worship, staff had planned, barring any other direction by council, to provide this memorandum to the residents that had expressed concerns.
Thank you. So, so just to be clear, this memo can be distributed. Do you need a council motion to distribute this to the residents?
No, I don't think so, Your Worship, because these memorandums are public, but we'll make sure that copies are actually provided so they don't have to look for it. We actually make them available to them.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that would be nice if we could mail that back to Mrs. Nash. So if she's got follow-up questions, she can get them to us in time for our last meeting before the summer break, because by the time we get back from the summer break, theoretically that interchange will be open. And I would like to see the residents feeling comfortable that we've addressed their concerns.
Thank you. Councilor Ferguson on the 216 corridor.
Yes, 216th. I wanted to say that I want to thank staff for getting this answer for us as quick as possible. You know, there are within this, I mean, if I may through the chair, there's more, you've got bullet points, but obviously for every single bullet point, there must be further and supplemental information and research, including data. It's, I guess, a concern of the residents, I guess all residents really, at all times, it's always safety, and safety for people of all ages, including children. So I guess under a couple of things, I'll point out the preparation of school travel plan. Has that been prepared already, or that's in the stages of being prepared? That's my first question.
It is being prepared, Your Worship. It hasn't been finalized yet.
Okay, so those are the type of things that the residents might want to know before it's finalized. And if they have specific or more detail, hopefully, Mr. Safey, you and your staff can help them with supplemental information, if I may.
Yes, of course, Your Worship. That's certainly what staff is here.
And my last comment, Mr. Mayor, is, you know, this is a major intersection being open. There's a positive side, obviously, to the fact that it's going to relieve congestion, and that relates to safety and environmental concerns as well. So I think that, you know, it's important that the residents do know the steps and what we are planning to do with regarding this. And it's important that they will also get this information provided for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I just want to move on to the delegation. Direct council's attention to today's distribution list on page 1. There is a memo from staff regarding tree removal that's been requested by the delegation. And staff are proposing that both trees be removed. One is obviously the Township of Langley's tree, and the other would be removed by the property owner. So it says unless otherwise directed by council, they would move it. So Mr. Backman, do you need a motion of council to direct staff to remove the sweet tree and do it in conjunction with the property owner to remove their tree?
Your Worship, I don't think so, but Mr. Seffi, perhaps you could jump in to make sure you've got enough authority to conclude this matter.
Thank you, Your Worship. No, there's no additional direction required. I just want to make sure that council is aware that removing the trees will not address the concerns expressed by the residents. That is critical. And the other part of the discussion, Your Worship, and I do have maps if you desire, if council wishes to take a look. The other point that needs to be made is it is not at this point to my knowledge and to address my concerns. It is not a confirmation. I have not received a confirmation as to whether the tree that was referenced as being on the public road allowance is actually on the public road allowance. That is something that we typically would do through a survey. Based on aerial mapping that we have, it looks to be on the property line. Having said that, in the interest of going forward, staff is suggesting that perhaps we can proceed unless otherwise directed, so no additional direction from council is necessary. Subject to Mr. and Mrs. Hather agreeing, we can remove one tree and we can absorb the cost as part of the existing budgets that we have for operating. And as long as there's understanding that it will not address the issues in terms of the on-site concerns that they have with the roots of the trees encroaching and invading really the pipes on site. And secondly, the fact that there is another tree, the roots of which are intertwined with the first tree. And that removal of one will do nothing. Removal of both will still do nothing in terms of addressing the concerns. And the last point I make, Your Worship, is that the tree is in good health and condition. And the home was built after the trees were there, utilizing old pipes. And again, I do have maps that I can share with council at your direction, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. I'll go through the questions of council, and I appreciate staff's work on this. Certainly, obviously challenging for everyone, but the request of the delegation was very basic, was to ask us to remove the street tree, and it looks like staff are willing to do that. So that pretty much addresses their concerns. There are other concerns, as I suggested to the delegation. We do have a process in place if they wish to pursue that. We have a council policy where they can pursue their claim of damages and go through that process. But I don't know if we need to belabor this. There's a long list and we're running out of time, but I'll go through the list if council wishes. Council Richter?
Yes, I would like to move deferral of this item to the next meeting. We did not get the items distributed in the first package until 12:10 today. I haven't had a chance to go through all of them. I haven't seen this tree report. And I believe that there are corollary questions that need to be raised and that council needs to talk about in more detail. So I know you're going to go through everybody, but my preference is to delay this to the next meeting.
So actually it wouldn't be deferring, it would just be that you'd be providing direction to staff not to remove the tree until council's had an opportunity.
I don't even think there should be direction to staff. I just think this whole agenda item should be deferred to the next meeting.
Well, it's not an agenda item. It's as a result of a delegation. We certainly can refer the delegation to staff, but there is a report, so we can just we can do nothing. But I think staff would require direction then to do nothing for 2 weeks while we deliberate, or we can just allow staff to go ahead and do what they request of us. Of the
but Mr. Mayor, our procedure bylaw is quite clear. All we can do is to direct a delegation to staff for a report. Apparently we have a report, which I didn't even know that we had. So I don't mind directing it to staff for a report and deal with the report at the next meeting. But I don't think we should be dealing with the report right now when some of us have not had the opportunity to even read the report.
Thank you.
But that's not fair to me, and that's not the procedure bylaw process.
Okay, I'll go through the questions. All we have to do is just direct staff to await our instruction at the next meeting. That'll be very simple. Councilor Davis.
Yes, thank you. I am concerned that we got information late, and I'm also concerned that, and I know you covered it very well, Mayor Froze, but I'm concerned that when we remove these trees, we will be making ourselves responsible for any damage on site. And I think that we've got to look at that. That has to be looked at. So by either way, I think we could just defer the tree removal for 2 more weeks to answer some questions.
Fair enough. Councilor Whitmarsh?
Yeah, I'm supportive of waiting 2 weeks to remove the tree, allowing us to make the decision next meeting.
Councilor Long?
I've got similar concerns because during the delegation, I knew that removing the tree isn't going to solve the problem because the roots are still there. You can't get the roots out and they're going to continue to grow even though the tree's gone. So this is a bigger issue for sure. And now I'm hearing from staff that they maybe there was an issue with the pipes when the house was built. So there's a lot more to this than meets the eye. So we'll have to get to the root of the matter, so to speak here. But now this memo says that the trees are going to be removed. So I think we would have to give specific direction to not remove it. Otherwise, right. This memo says it's going to go ahead, right?
That's right. Exactly. So we could allow staff to remove the trees, which was the request. As far as damage to the pipes, that is the property owner's responsibility. And there is a process, as I explained to them, that they can, if they do feel there's a claim, to go through township to put that claim in. And generally, council stays away from those and lets the policy and the staff deal with it. Again, they built the trees have been there a long time. We established that. How council can take responsibility for that, I don't know. We have to go through who's left. Councilor Ferguson.
Okay, yeah, I think that you're right. They did say today, the Haythers said today that they needed, they're looking for some infrastructure information. I think Mr. Safey's just indicated about when was the infrastructure put in place. Okay, we also got something, I'm not sure if other members of council saw it, we just got something came up 241 about the Haythers have indicated about the fact that they have made the decision to remove the southeast tree themselves as soon as possible. And I imagine that's the one that's already on their property. And when they're financially able, for our own peace of mind, to prevent future issues. Now, what that is and how that implies our decision, I don't know. But I'd be prepared to wait a couple of weeks, as other councillors have said as well.
Thank you. So I'm just going to ask Mr. Backen, just by direction, do you need a motion, or just that you, by direction, you'll wait 2 weeks before taking any action?
Your worship, I think it's inherent if we have a referral motion or a deferral motion that goes on the next agenda, we'll take no action based on that deferral or referral.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Richter, do you wish to make that motion?
Yes, I want to defer action on this report and a decision until the July 27th meeting.
Yes. Okay, is there a seconder? Okay, I'm going to call the question. I think we can deal with this very quickly. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you. So is there any other business?
Yes.
Councilor Kuntz. Councilor Kuntz.
Yeah, just 2 property matters.
On other business?
No,
no, you're ahead of yourself a little bit.
Okay.
Any other business, Councilor Richter? Any business?
Yes, in the items distributed on July the 9th, item number 26, where we had the property taxes come in at a much higher rate than we had anticipated, which I think is excellent news. And I just wanted to draw council's attention to the fact that by us having a small penalty on July 2nd, we got a 92% return on those residential taxes. Those communities around us, like Surrey and Coquitlam, they put off their tax penalty until October 1st, and they got like 50% taxes in. So I think council made the right decision in that, in how we split that penalty. And I just wanted to point that trend out to council. Also, item number 27 on page 90, our virtual Canada Day celebration that the TOL put on, I note with a great deal of pleasure that it was all done for $25,000, which was a grant from the federal government. So it all came in on budget, which is wonderful news to know that a virtual event can be done for $25,000. Item number 29 on page 36. I'm very concerned about this particular situation with the unauthorized bike path and apparently unauthorized use of township properties around that bike path. And I'm wondering what will staff's follow-up be to this?
Stephanie, do you have any comments on the bike path?
Your Worship, I have to apologize. I was dealing with another matter.
Okay,
with
no
the staff
problem at
person
all.
at the door.
Yeah, I'm going to just ask Mr. Backen if you can turn off your mic because the echoing. Thanks. It's regarding item for distribution, July 9th, item 29 on page 36. It's regarding unauthorized use of township property, where it looks like some young folks have taken.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yep.
Yeah, you know the one. Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, there was a subsequent communication, I think, from the adjacent property owner. There is an unopened road allowance, Your Worship, that has been used by youth in the area, junior youth, in being very innovative and creative in creating a bit of a riding area for bicycles, which is clearly doing several things, impacting the natural environment. It is endangering themselves on land that they don't have a right to be on. So it poses public safety concerns, environmental protection concerns, liability concerns. So what staff is proposing to do is close that off. But we wanted to make sure that council is aware of that and the implications in terms of likely the parents of those youth or maybe the youth themselves approaching council and I guess reversing staff's proposed plans or direction. But in the meantime, we received the communication from the adjacent property owner. I don't know what the intent was because staff is dealing with the issue being twofold. One is regarding the streamside setback protection requirements, which are pursuant to bylaw, and staff has responded to the resident, and there is, I think, the response was also communicated to council with the distribution package. And the second part is, having visited the site myself, Your Worship, I noted a piece of a trail connection that may be a natural desire path for the residents to the north to access 88th Avenue is missing. So as part of my inspection and discussions with the resident, I broached the subject of potentially having, because of the land being essentially an environmental setback area, undevelopable, I suggested the possibility of a public right-of-way to allow the public to be able to access 88th Avenue straight down along 206 Street. I believe it was 206 Street. I don't have the map in front of me. And the residents stated essentially with some, I guess, considerations to her advantage, to her benefit. And what I took that to mean is if we were able to cost share some of the fencing that's required around her property to prevent people accessing the property, then she would be agreeable to granting a right-of-way for construction of a trail. Now, construction itself will require significant funds. That's subject to us being able to acquire the right-of-way from the resident. We would include as part of the budget for council to consider.
Thank you. Thank you for that description. Thank you. Councillor Long, any other business?
I'm just wondering about the opening.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, point of order. I wasn't on my list here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you, so I thought I was waiting. If you want to finish your list, Councillor Richter, I'll go to Councillor Long.
Okay. Item number 30 on page 44, which is the water report. Well, it starts earlier than page 44, but on page 44, it references that one of the labs that tested our water had caused the testing errors. And I'm wondering, have we changed labs as a result of that?
Your Worship, our ability to actually change mid-contract a certain service provider is fairly limited. So I'll have to take a look and see whereabouts we are in the contract. Typically, these services are procured as part of either annual or biannual process. So as long as we are not in breach of that, certainly we will be looking at making appropriate revisions or corrections.
Okay. Page 50 of the same report. Well, on page 50, it is the same report. I note that Tall Timbers wells are going to be replaced, and I'm just wondering why the Acadia wells are not also being replaced, as they seem to have higher arsenic levels. Now, still within permissible levels, but still higher arsenic levels than the other wells in the township. So what's the status of those? What's the status of the Tall Timber well replacement? Are they still on target?
They are on target, Your Worship, and staff can look into it a bit more and provide council with an appending or I guess augmenting memorandum to provide a status on the other wells and why they cannot be decommissioned, which is likely twofold cost and implications in terms of impact on the financial side of the equation.
Yeah, because they're up in the same area with the Tall Timbers wells, basically. Yeah, I was just, so staff can report back on that. That'd be great. Page 55 in the report shows a very interesting trend, which I think is a good trend, and that is the total water coming out of our wells vis-a-vis the total GVRD or GVWD water that we're using is decreasing. So we're using less aquifer water and more metro water, which I think is a good trend. And can we expect this to continue?
As I believe we would, as the developable areas that rely on Metro Vancouver water increase in population, the percentage of Metro Vancouver water will also increase. However, there are some savings that we do, as long as the wells are managed with the aquifer, there are some savings to the water users by blending with our well water. So it's certainly a fine line, but I think it's going to increase the percentage of Metro Vancouver water.
Okay, good. Well, and also page 113 to 116 in this water report, the charts were too small to read. I'm just wondering if next year's report we could get bigger font in it. I mean, I was able to read it with a magnifying glass eventually, but it was a little small. Item number 40 on page 150 to 151. And this matter also came up on the July 2nd distribution list. Is this being investigated by staff? It's a letter from Mr. Brent Perry, I believe, or emails from Mr. Perry.
It's been sent to the Community Development Division. So I believe Mr. Seppi, I believe this has been under some investigation by the Community Development Division.
Typically, that's what happens, Your Worship, with correspondence. All of them are followed up on, yes.
And so council will be getting a report back on that one for sure?
I don't know the specifics, Your Worship. I don't know if all of the communications require a report to council. But if that's the council direction, certainly we can provide a information memorandum to council.
Okay, that would be appreciated, yeah. And item number 43 on page 162 and 163. And I'm just flipping over there. It was a letter from Mrs. Turner, Joan Turner, Miss Turner. And I'm also wondering if council will be getting a report on this matter as well.
Your Worship, this is the one I just referenced earlier as part of the other memo.
Yeah.
Which was to do with the closure of the unopened road allowance.
Okay, so that's all. That's the same one. All right, and then on the June 29th, items distributed, item number 4, there was a letter from Mrs. Kamaljeet Graywall, and I'm wondering, did staff follow up with her on this? This is concerns around the pocket park in that area. I know that we talked about it at our last meeting, but have staff actually contacted her and followed up with her? And if they haven't, could they?
Yes, Your Worship, yes, certainly.
Thank you.
Okay. And the last item, Mr. Mayor, which I referenced earlier, I'll be bringing forward a notice of motion asking for some sort of a background or historical perspective on the 43rd Avenue flooding situation. I believe beavers are involved in it, but I'm not 100% sure.
Thank you.
I'll bring that for the next meeting. Thank you.
Council Long.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I'd like to ask when we're going to open our pool. Many pools have opened. Vancouver opened Kitsilano, North Brighton, and Second Beach today. Maple Grove was opening next week. Al Anderson Pool opened on June the 29th in the city. Port Moody's open, and so is Port Coquitlam. So
You're referring to the Aldergrove community.
That's right. There are.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Batten.
No, thank you, Your Worship. There is some outdoor pools that are opening. That's quite correct. We are working to bring council an update that involves both the safety and the finances, but not financially oriented as was perhaps perceived, but to take that into account given the significance of the, I guess, distancing that's necessary. Right now, we're under the previous council resolution. Right now, we're under the previous resolution, which I think effectively took us to the time we can present that update, which will be at the next meeting. So we'll probably be able to better advise then.
Because we're missing the boat here, quite literally, because most of these pools have opened several weeks ago, and by the time we open, who knows what. Cultus Lake Water Park is open now as well. Anyway, I'm very concerned about it. I think we should get our facility open. It's one of the best outdoor pools in the region, and I don't understand why it's not opening, so I really am concerned about that. So what am I hearing, Your Worship? Can you please clarify? It's going to open next meeting?
There will be a report to us for next meeting for us to deliberate. Is that correct, Mr. Batten?
Then it won't be open until at least the end of the July.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other business?
Okay,
I'm gonna now ask for a motion to resolve into special close.
Motion.
Councilor Davis, seconder. You have a second? Councilor Whitmarsh. Councilor Kuntz, you had something for special close?
Oh, yeah, just 2 property items.
Okay. And Councilor Richter, Councilor Richter for close.
Add a legal item and a property item.
A legal and a property. I got that correctly? Okay, and I've got Councilor Long. Did you have something?
Yeah, I have property item 2, please.
Okay. Councilor Ferguson.
Yes.
Councilor Ferguson. You have something? I see your hand, Councilor Ferguson. Do you have something? You can't hear you. You're getting that headset of yours not working.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
A property item.
Property, okay. Councilor Davis.
Legal.
Legal. Councilor Woodward.
Illegal.
Okay, and I've got a property, but it might be one that's already been covered. So there you go. Okay, with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
Carried. A motion to terminate this meeting.
Termination.
Councilor Davis, second by Councilor Whitmarsh. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We'll reconvene at 5 o'clock. Thank you.
Do we